discredit the president. And you look at these in formal agency files, and on the one hand you go, okay, that was the 1960s. That was the early 1960s. That was before there was any oversight on the CIA at all. It wasn't until the Church Committee hearings in 1975, 1976 that we even had congressional oversight of the CIA. There was no Senate Intelligence Committee. There was no House Intelligence Committee at the time. And at that point, assassinations had not been outlawed. The CIA was allowed to assassinate people. There's since been a ban on that. So you go, okay, that's 60 years ago. The fact is they did it. The fact is that is within the array of options that folks in covert operations saw as on the table.
Working with the mob.
Now, but that goes back a long time. I found it totally unsurprising. It's one of these things. This was kind of the general theme. It's shocked but not surprised. You know, it's like, holy crap, they put this in writing? What are we doing here, guys? But you're like, well, I'm not surprised they did it because I know they were doing all these other things. The fact is the CIA was working with the mob before there was a CIA. Before it was done by the CIA, worked with, for example, the Italian mob was done through the Department of War really starting in the 1930s, and then especially in the 1940s, because they were the Central Intelligence Agency. Well, at the time it was the OSS in the 1940s, but it would become the CIA. One of their main logistical points of contact and allies for the resistance against Mussolini in Italy. Mussolini was cracking down both on the Vatican Church and on the Italian mafia. And so there were strange bedfellows. There's a great book on this by Paul Williams. I think it was published in 2017. It's called Operation Gladio, the CIA, the Vatican, and the Mob. And I recommend this book to everyone because it's a really, really detailed academic deep dive on this nexus between a religious institution, an intelligence agency, an illegal organized crime syndicate that does all manner of black ops, and it especially focuses on the funding relationship. In fact, this just came out, and this sort of gets to the utility of these documents. There's an incredible document that just was released this week where Larry Summers, who was the head of the U.S. Treasury, so not only was he the head of Harvard University and the head of the American money system, but he says he's trying to explain to Jeffrey Epstein kind of the politics of what's happening in the Vatican. And what he says to him is that what's actually most important going on right now is what's happening with the Vatican Bank, which is kind of the deep politics of the Vatican. And I saw this email and I just laughed and did a little twirly thing in my chair, because it's totally unsurprising if you read that book Operation Gladio that I mentioned. It traces 80 years of this, because the Vatican Bank was the first offshore bank before offshore banking even existed. It was there was an alliance with the Vatican Bank during World War II itself with our Department of War and with organized crime outfits, at least according to the evidence that I find persuasive in this book, and that appears to be validated by Italian court documents in the 1990s when all of this was litigated. Incidentally, that was when the mob was really prosecuted for the first time. But effectively what happened was you had strange bedfellows. You had the United States, who wanted to get rid of Mussolini. You had the Vatican, who wanted to get rid of Mussolini. And you had organized crime, who wanted to get rid of Mussolini. And because organized crime is very deep in the logistics and unions, they control the ports, they control the streets, they control safe houses. And if they have allies in a bank, they are able to launder money effectively in order to do black market, type trade. And if you have for example, the support of the U.S. government to facilitate that, and there's protection offered to those organized crime groups. What you end up having is effectively a state-sponsored mafia with an untouchable bank. And at the time, and Larry Summers explains this to Jeffrey Epstein in very simple terms, which is, here you go. The most important change in the Vatican may not be Pope Benedict's sudden retirement, change in leadership of the Institute for Works of Religion, the Vatican's bank. Because of the Vatican's status as a sovereign country, it's exempt from transparency rules of not only Italy, but of the European Union. This status allows its elite clients to evade any scrutiny in their money transfers. Last May, Vatican Bank president was fired after Italian authorities opened an investigation into a far-flung bribery scheme. And he goes through this, but what's important here is the British, when we think of offshore banking now, it's usually associated with Cayman Islands, Jersey, Man, Panama, but Panama's sort of a different story. But it's usually associated with these kind of small island countries that are formally, kind of their own territory, their own sort of sovereign territory. You also see this within the United States in Indian, Native American reservations with these kind of autonomous zones that can be shielded from certain kinds of public disclosures that in a typical finance institution.
That's going on with Native American banks?
Well, yeah, this was actually part of...
Is that connected to the casinos? Do they have a lot of money from the casinos?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, if you watch The Octopus Murders, which I think was HBO or Netflix or one of those...
That's great. I haven't seen it, but
yeah,
it's awesome.
It's fantastic. And, it goes through how this was used effectively by the NSA during the Promise Software scandal and the Iran-Contra scandal of the 1980s, where you had basically the NSA and then the U.S. government running money laundering effectively through, casinos on Native American sovereign territory. But the fact is in the 1940s, the Vatican Bank was really the only game in town. This traces back at the CIA level to a lawyer named Paul Hellawell, who was kind of the architect of money laundering for the CIA. And it didn't even start really started with the attempt to try to stop Mao in the 1930s and 1940s. There were the Opium Wars in the 1830s, where effectively the British Empire and the East India Trading Company were making ungodly amounts of money by selling opium to China. They would grow the opium on the Golden Crescent, India, and then they would sell it to China with a huge customer base, which would bring in huge amounts of revenues to the British Crown. And then there were two opium wars that were fought in the 1830s and 50s, I believe, around then. And the opium wars were China's attempt to stop the import of opium into China because it had a huge, by that point, opium addiction problem. Opium dens in China were a massive issue within the country. They tried to ban it, and the British Crown pried open the narcotics market through a military conquest of parts of China. That's how Britain got control of Hong Kong, which remains a major narco trafficking site connected to Jeffrey Epstein in very weird ways. I'll just sidebar that. But Mao rose to power to, in the name of his public campaign was about rejecting the century of humiliation between the 1830s and the 1930s to support Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang, the Chinese nationalists against the Chinese communists. The War Department couldn't get enough congressional allocations, taxpayer money to support that, so they had to find some way to finance the forces that are now effectively Taiwan, because when they ultimately lost, they fled to the island of Formosa, which is now Taiwan. But they financed that initially, the War Department, the Chinese nationalists, through the narcotics trade, through the narcotics cultivated in the Golden Triangle. And these operations continued in Cambodia and Laos and were a big part of the JFK expansion of covert operations. to this day in Fort Bragg, the Special Operations Training Center called the JFK. This was a massive expansion of small wars, covert action instead of big military action, so it was mostly spearheaded by CIA rather than DOD or Department of War. But what happened was Paul Helliwell, in order to be able to traffic illegal narcotics, created a bunch of these CIA banking structures. One's called Castle Bank and Trust in the Cayman Islands, another one, Nugent Hand in Australia. And when you have that, friendly bank that's protected, then you can move drugs. This is this overworld-underworld alliance between intelligence and organized crime, because basically every intelligence operation is I don't want to say every, but at the operational level, it's a crime. It's an act of sabotage. It's an act of subversion. It's an act of obstruction. It's an act of illegal surveillance. So in order to do a illegal crime, you don't want to do it yourself because then your fingerprints are on the gun. But if you know people who do illegal crimes for a living in an organized way and have experience in doing it, that allows you to be a very useful extension, and it gets justified in the name of national security. The illegal narcotics trade set up by Paul Helliwell, who would go on to be the main lawyer for Disney and set up Disney World in Orlando. You can look all this up. You can pull up Paul Helliwell's Wikipedia, or you can look at the history of Disney, or you can pull up Castle Bank and Trust. You can put any one of these up on screen. This is all fully declassified. And so they then took that model to South America and Latin America and the Caribbean during Operation Condor, Operation Mongoose. And this is part of what gave rise to the Iran-Contra that spawned Jeffrey Epstein, which was the CIA got busted running the same thing it did in 1940s China, which was a drugs for cash for guns operation. You can't get enough money in USAID. In the 1940s, USAID didn't even exist. You can't get enough money from U.S. taxpayer dollars. You can't get enough money from private donors who will draft off of the regime change for their own profit. So how do you get your resistance rebels enough money? That usually comes down to black market trade, whether that's diamonds in Africa, whether that's illegal mining activities in South America, or whether that's narcotics. And it's the best things to use for this kind of covert financing are small, fungible, physical materials that can be converted into large sums of cash. For example, like a truck full of cocaine can fund an army. A truck full of copper can't. And so you had this state-sanctioned drug trade, this state-sanctioned illegal weapons logistics apparatus, and the state-sanctioned money laundering apparatus that started in the 1940s and was utilized throughout the entirety of the Cold War. On the mafia side, Operation Gladio was this stay-behind network, is what they said. Basically, these were right-wing groups, many or some of which were kind of Nazi-adjacent, who hated communism. And so even though we fought against the Nazis and Mussolini and Hitler in World War II, there was a utility to preserving a certain homegrown domestic network that really hated communism to assist us on the ground in the war against communism. And what you saw was in Operation Gladio, this was a NATO-wide covert network, alliance of networks, a network of networks, that in basically every one of the NATO countries there was a cell or a number of cluster cells that were set up in order to covertly influence the domestic politics of the country. And if you look at the members of these cluster cells, there's some of the, like Silvio Berlusconi was a part of the so-called P2 lounge that came up in the Operation Gladio files when the Italian government basically put all this on trial in the 1990s. And that structure is still used by intelligence today. If you go to my X feed and you look up, for example, Ann Applebaum and the thread that I did on the Integrity Initiative, if you just put Integrity Initiative in, I can show you what these cluster cells look like. And it's fascinating to look at the organizational structure of it. But I guess what I'm getting to here is with the mob and the Vatican, at that time, that was the only game in town for offshore banking. If you wanted to have a bank that had no oversight whatsoever. When the British lost the Suez Canal in 1957 and basically had to give up their empire, this is during decolonialization, the British Empire transitioned from a physical empire to a financial empire and moved heavily into offshore banking. That's how you got these kind of, BVI, British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, Jersey, Man, all these kind of British offshore banking hubs. And with London as the capital of international finance, the British Empire was effectively able to maintain a comparable level of imperial vassal state control without having physical troops or physical territorial control. And so the Vatican Bank has lost a lot of its rank, I would say, in the international finance system since the 1940s because the market's so saturated now with offshore banking hubs. But that explains what's happening in this Larry Summers, Jeffrey Epstein exchange.
One of the weirder things about these files is there's some stuff in there that you go, okay, one thing that we know happens is when something is true, a bunch of stuff gets attached to it that's both not true and also preposterous that allows you to sort of dismiss all of it together. Yeah. There's a lot of people thought about that with Pizzagate. And there's some stuff that I saw online that was like George W. Bush was like involved in ritual sacrifice or things along those lines, like killing babies and eating people and wild shit.
Yeah.
What do you think that stuff is?
I don't know. I don't.
Do you think it really occurs?
What I'll say is this is a bad week to be a total Pizzagate denialist. You would feel a lot more comfortable about it a week ago than you would this week. I don't particularly focus, or I don't want to say care. I don't. My knowledge set on it is a lot more limited on it because I don't think it's a central crux of political influence. I don't know if it's kind of almost a inside joke in a certain way. Jeffrey Epstein himself in these emails is unbelievably trolly. He'll say things that are the kind of shit posts you say to a buddy or your brother or something that you don't mean.
Right.
You're
fucking around.
You're cheek. Yeah. But if you were a cynical, out to get you person who somehow obtained that text message, you'd say, "Oh, look, he said it." And so there's a lot of that going on. But the fact is I've seen a lot of images shared around the time period of when Pizzagate was popping off in 2016 that all I'll say is it doesn't look good or easily explainable. At the same time, a lot of those screenshots I have not, for most of these, for the things I've posted about or that I'm talking about here, I've gone to the Justice Department file. I've looked up the file number, confirmed whether or not the screenshot is actually what it is. For those, I have not yet, but I wouldn't feel totally confident saying there's no there. But that's about as far as I can go on that.
When you say images, what are you talking about?
Well, there's a lot of, if you look up pizza, for example, it's just as a keyword search, you'll see, or cheese or something. It looks like, in the DOJ database for these new files, you'll see a lot of things of people talking about pizza in a way that
It seems like a code.
It's kind of impossible
To imagine it's actually
to
just
do to
pizza.
a pizza. That's about
Oh,
how
okay.
you know what I mean? But I don't, to me, there's so much real world provable things in there, and also so many kind of more real world implications of allegations that are made in the files that kind of, should be explained. Like a common mistake that I see going around social media this week is people, it kind of gets the reason that the FBI and the president was arguing that these files shouldn't be released in the first place, which is that people would take things out of context and wildly, and think things are true that are not because they're baseless allegations made by, some anonymous tipster. But because it's in an FBI file, people will think it's true. Now, I don't think that's a reason not to release these. I'm extremely glad these were released. What I'm saying is I've seen that phenomenon, run away, and some of this I know is kind of baseless in terms of the factual evidence, because some of the people, one of the confidential human sources, for example, that is cited, the first day of the drop, there was this kind of bombshell claim this is probably the most viral post the first day of the DOJ release, which was a confidential human source, a CHS, means of FBI informant, who the FBI internal memo describes how this confidential human source reported that Alan Dershowitz was a Mossad agent, and after every meeting, he goes back and tells his Mossad handlers, what they talked about. And you go, oh my God, it's an FBI confidential human source. The FBI wouldn't, pay an informant unless they found them credible for this sort of thing. On the very next page of the files, it says, President Trump, I'm paraphrasing, you can pull this up if you want. President Trump is controlled by the government of Israel, and they have, I forget if he says they have blackmail or something to this effect. Now, I don't know whether either of those things are true or not. I don't know what, any more than anybody else who's done research on this. Certainly there's a lot of overlap between Dershowitz and the Israeli government and high-level Israeli officials. So in that sense, if that were to be reported, I don't know that it would be who knows about whether that's true or not. But it plays into a kind of confirmation bias that a lot of people have. And so when you see that in an FBI file, the first thing your instinct is, if you're, if that's your journalism beat, is to write all about it and get millions of views. And same thing, there's a MAGA civil war right now that's happening over issues around Israel. It's, you say, oh my God, it's been proven, the FBI knows that, Ken Silva, who's a journalist, shortly after that published a tweet containing a file that had much less engagement, where he said, actually, I actually have a copy of this document. Again, I'm paraphrasing here, where it matches that document file number. It's got the same text, and it looks like that confidential human source is Chuck Johnson. Now, I saw that and I went, oh my God. Because one morning I woke up to a text from that very person saying, this is about 2 years ago, I never met him, never talked to him, don't have his number. Somehow he got mine and messaged me on Signal to turn myself in because I'm going to prison. He then proceeded to look up my ex-wife and make allegations that I was a Mossad agent because she was a prostitute from a foreign country and involved in all these, Mossad black ops type things. Now, he didn't even get the name right. He found a different person with a similar spelling that was, I guess, busted for prostitution or something, and then makes these giant claims on social media that I have been married to a foreign spy prostitute or something. And then he goes on to message someone he thinks is my donor and threaten them to cut off funds because if he doesn't, then I've made the intelligence community very angry, and they have deputized him to tell the person he thought was my donor that the intelligence services of the United States of America will crush the businesses of someone he thought was my donor if he doesn't cut off the funds he thought that person was giving to me. Okay? This is that confidential human source, or at least according to the reporting of Ken Silva. That the level of things that are untrue about that, combined with the fact that this very person is going around saying that he's not just an FBI informant, but that he actually can direct the intelligence agencies of the United States to crush someone's private practice if they don't change their discretionary donations to someone. Like, that's the person you're saying that person's comments to a FBI officer or task force prove these claims about Dershowitz and Trump? I mean, that's ridiculous. I know firsthand that there's zero credibility to those claims. Now, they may be true or not, but the fact is there's a lot of context to all of these. What is, just because it's said in an FBI file does not make it true. We learned that lesson in Russiagate. We learned that lesson with the Steele dossier. But I think that same sort of caution and prudence should be applied with these. And I think ultimately the truth wins out on these things. It just, takes longer than you might want to.
It's so tangled. The whole thing is just, I think everybody who looks at it realizes this is a rabbit hole that just goes to the center of the earth. And there's so many people involved in that. Here's the big question that people ask. If there was a Jeffrey Epstein, and it seems like all these things he is involved in, is there a Jeffrey Epstein right now that we don't know about?
There's a million of them.
A million of them.
I mean, this is why I find this. This is not the core of what I focus on, but I find it a really interesting field of study because it helps understand so many other U.S. government institutions and the relationship between government and private business. Jeffrey Epstein is part of a class of what are effectively professional fixers. And this is a kind of class of professional who sits not really within a particular government or private sector institution, but in the kind of sticky layer between them that connects them all. And I would say that, for example, people like Mark Rich, Bruce Rappaport, and I can go through all these figures and who they are, Robert Mayhew and these types, are just good case studies in how the intelligence world, the business community, uses. Let's take an example of Bruce Rappaport, and this is you can pull up on screen if you want. There's a great article. I think it's called. I think it's from 1988 or 1991. It's called Intrigue in High Places, Oil Pipeline, Iraq, and then just Bruce Rappaport. It's R-A-P-P. Yeah, here you go. Pipeline Deal, Intrigue in High Places. And I'll describe what happens here in a second. In fact, there's a great YouTube video on this as well. If you look up Bruce, just on YouTube, Bruce Rappaport, 1988. There's a great kind of couple-minute summary of all of this. But effectively what happened was, and let me start this by just, Jeffrey Epstein got to Bear Stearns in 1976, and then worked there until 1980. Sorry, just because you have it on screen, maybe I'll go through this first and then I'll do the Jeffrey Epstein connections. So what happened here was you had the Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1988, and Henry Kissinger had a really great quote about this, because he asked, what is the U.S. government strategy on this? Because it's very convoluted. And why are we giving weapons to Iran when the Iranian Revolution just happened in 1979 that overthrew what was a U.S. government-friendly government that was partially installed by the CIA in 1953. We've now declared an international arms embargo on them. We're basically at war with the Ayatollahs. Why are we giving them weapons and helping them defeat Iraq? And the issue is we were also in a kind of war over regional hegemony and oil with Iraq. And so Henry Kissinger's quote was, my only wish is that both sides could lose. And so what happened is because we didn't want Iraq to take over Iran and become effectively bigger than Saudi Arabia in the region, we were funding and giving weapons to Iran to try to fend off the much bigger Iraqi army. And then at a certain point in this, we began to back Iraq. We went back and forth supporting Iran and Iraq. And so this Iraq, because of the embargoes on it, wanted to build a pipeline to get its oil out, and it was going to pass through Jordan, and it was going to abut against the border of Israel. And a major CIA contractor and CIA-connected private business called Bechtel, highly, highly influential company. There's been many, many, many books written on Bechtel. And Bechtel is alive and well today. If there was a saga, for example, around the Stanford Internet Observatory, around the censorship industrial complex, when I visited the Stanford Internet Observatory and I went to the courtyard is sponsored by Bechtel. I think it's called the Bechtel Courtyard. But what happened is the Bechtel was promised by Iraq $1 billion contract in 1980, 80s money for constructing this pipeline. And the Central Intelligence Agency and the White House National Security Council, both for geostrategic reasons, wanted this pipeline built. The problem is they were afraid the Israeli government was going to sabotage the pipeline because Iraq was very hostile to Israel, and there was a lot of tension between the Iraqi government and the Israeli government, and they were afraid that if Bechtel got this contract and built this pipeline, that Israel would these pipelines are very fragile, and because it passes close to it, it's very possible that would happen. It would destroy both the CIA's goal and the private profiteer Bechtel's goal. So how do you solve that problem? Well, what the CIA did is what the National Security Council, which is the interagency that the CIA reports to, did is they engaged a private fixer named Bruce Rappaport, who was a Swiss billionaire with close ties to the Israeli government, to back channel with the Israeli government some sort of secret agreement that would guarantee that they would not sabotage the pipeline. And because the Attorney General of the United States, now again, think about this as well. As I'm saying this, think about Jeffrey Epstein and think about the character of Bill Barr, for example, who started his career for 7 years at the CIA, was highly involved in the CIA's Iran-Contra, and then was Attorney General, both in the 1990s during the Epstein-connected BCCI scandal and when Jeffrey Epstein killed himself or whatever happened to him. What happens is Bruce Rappaport does indeed use his contacts with the Israeli government to strike an agreement that then allows would allow the project to be greenlit, but it triggers a special prosecutor's investigation of the Attorney General himself, Ed Meese, because one of his friends was alleged to be in on the deal. So they argued that effectively that through Bruce Rappaport, the Attorney General was striking a secret agreement with Israel to profit himself, a massive conflict of interest. And what ended up happening is Bruce Rappaport stepped forward and said, no, it wasn't to profit. The terms weren't to profit the friend. It was the terms we secretly reached with Israel is that they were going to get like a 30% cut on the revenue of the pipeline, and that's what secured the buy-in. But the fact is Bruce Rappaport was not. Now, the other part of this is that the National Security Council told basically the overseas development arm of the U.S. government, a formal U.S. government agency, to put American taxpayer funds to help subsidize the pipeline, the Bechtel pipeline, and that government agency did not want to put up something like $400 million of taxpayer funds on it because they thought Bruce Rappaport was a very shady Epstein-like figure who had all sorts of sordid, details about his own past. So that government agency queried the CIA for all records about Bruce Rappaport. And the CIA gave them a limited hangout. They said, we only have a few documents that are responsive to it and no red flags. As it turned out, what the special prosecutor compelled from the CIA is that they had a whole dirty dossier on Bruce Rappaport. And if they had given that to the U.S. government agency, there couldn't have been support for the pipeline. Now, after all the scandal, the pipeline ended up not being built. But the point is here you have the same type of person as Jeffrey Epstein, the same regions and countries that are involved in a significant part of the Epstein saga. You have the same structure of the intelligence community, private businesses, and back channel deals with government officials. But because there was no 201 file on Bruce Rappaport, he was not formally a CIA asset. He was what's called a liaison, a contact, a facilitator, a friend of the station. Doesn't work for the CIA. He's got his own hedge fund. He's got his own, basically finance. He'll invest in commodities or foreign exchange or private portfolio companies. But sometimes he'll work with the CIA. Sometimes he won't. Depends on whether it's good for him. And in this case, he thought it was good for him to take this. Who knows what cut he himself got on it. But the fact is here you have the same type of you have every layer of this, from the Justice Department to the CIA to the private financiers to the private companies to real-world geopolitical action. And this appears, in my view of it, to be exactly the model that Jeffrey Epstein himself replicated and was on parallel track with for his whole career. He's and I can get into that, but does that make sense in terms of this type of figure exists basically in every country, in every industry, and they're not all as prominent as Epstein, but I would argue people like Mark Rich and at the time Bruce Rappaport kind of were. They don't all have these child sex trafficking
that's the thing.
Type things.
This is the thing is what he was connected with. It makes me wonder, if he didn't have that sick thing where he liked underage girls, if he'd never gotten arrested, which was what, 2008 or something? When did he initially get arrested?
2006, but
2006.
But he was the plea deal was 2008. Yeah.
So if that hadn't happened, if you just got a guy who's getting of age prostitutes, we probably never hear about this.
Yeah. And you can imagine very easily why, because Epstein was involved in fraudulent financial activities his entire career. He was under SEC investigation at Bear Stearns in 1980 when he was involved in a deal. I think it was St. Joe's Mineral Company, which is owned by Seagram's, which is owned by the Bronfman family. He he got in trouble with the SEC at that time. He then, as soon as he got in trouble, he left Bear Stearns and went out on his own, but then worked effectively at Bear Stearns off the book for the next decade. According to his own testimony, he had a continuous relationship with Bear Stearns for, I think he said 31 years. It was basically from the moment, from the 1970s, 1976 until 2007, 2008, when Bear Stearns collapsed while Jeffrey Epstein was in jail. But then Jeffrey Epstein, it appears to me almost impossible that Jeffrey Epstein was not working on BCCI pipeline deals while he was at Bear Stearns. Bear Stearns was one of the three biggest clearinghouses for BCCI transactions. BCCI is the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. Sometimes people call it the Bank of Crooks and Criminals International. It's an incredible saga of CIA banking gone wrong. It's a bank that was started in Pakistan in 1972 and then grew to be the CIA's main way to covertly back the Mujahideen against the Russians during the Cold War. So we backed Osama bin Laden, the CIA. We backed the Islamic Mujahideen, the radicals who became Al Qaeda and ISIS, with billions of dollars of CIA and MI6 and Israeli and Saudi facilitated, co-support and financial funds in order to do a Cold War operation, just like we talked about with strange bedfellows, backing right-wing organized crime to stop left-wing communism. We did the same thing in Afghanistan through the Pakistan-Afghanistan border to covertly run guns to the Mujahideen. In fact, there's a great YouTube video that I always like to play so that you can see it for yourself. It's really short. You can look up 1979 Zbigniew Brzezinski dropping out of a helicopter to tell the Mujahideen that both God and the United States government is on their side. And the reason this clip I always think is so fun to play is because this was the very moment in 1979 that Jeffrey Epstein appears to have been involved in the BCCI financing of this very operation. So if you turn the volume up and you start at the beginning.
America's road. U.S. National Security Advisor Brzezinski flew to Pakistan to set about rallying resistance. He wanted to arm the Mujahideen without revealing America's role. On the Afghan border near the Khyber Pass, he urged the soldiers of God to redouble their efforts.
We know of their deep belief in God, and we are confident that their struggle will succeed. That land over there is yours. You'll go back to it one day because your fight will prevail and you'll have your homes and your mosques back again because your cause is right and God is on your side.
Now that is the National Security Advisor of the United States of America. The National Security Advisor is the highest post in the cabinet. It is the person the president talks to every day. All intelligence, war, military, and statecraft goes through the National Security Advisor. That is the numero uno. And he personally, in 1979, this didn't come out until years later, but we were covertly doing this. So to do a covert operation, and this is why I focus on the money side of Epstein from the 1970s to present, because the money in any covert operation is the most essential part. It's the only thing that is irreplaceable, and that if you don't have it, everything goes away. You lose one person, find another one. You lose one, logistics hub, can create another one with money. You lose money, you lose everything. You lose your ability to pay your informants. You lose your ability to bribe government officials. You lose your ability to, win the support of local institutions. We lost Vietnam, not really so much because we lost, at the kinetic war level, but because we lost the ability to fund it because it got defunded. So we literally couldn't do it anymore. And there's another great clip just to show how sophisticated CIA money laundering was even by the 1960s. Sorry, I'll stop doing this after, running around clip to clip after this, or I'll chill on it. But if you go to my X account, you can also find this on YouTube. There's a great, I believe it was CBS in the 1960s. It's called In the Pay. I think it's called In the Pay of the CIA, or but if you type in CIA money laundering, you'll see this great clip about how sophisticated CIA money laundering was already by the 1950s and 60s. And because everything the CIA does has to be laundered. It's a spy agency. If it writes a check, if it doesn't conceal the origins of the money, gigs up. So everything that is CIA has to move through some sort of money laundering mechanism. Well, to kind of, I guess, borrow a phrase from the president, somebody's doing the money laundering. You need outside contacts who do not work at the agency or necessarily for the agency to facilitate that money laundering. And that was done through, for example, the Pakistanis with BCCI, as well as contacts in London. That is what I believe Jeffrey Epstein was doing his entire career after that, from Towers Financial to his tenure with Leslie Wexner, to kind of the way I think that he helped model the Clinton Foundation itself with the Clintons in the early 2000s. And his expertise in that, I think, is what made him useful. Really not, well, it's more the connections of, I guess, donors and billionaires around him that made him the most useful. But the fact is he specialized, when he went out on his own, formally he leaves Bear Stearns in 1981 and starts a one-man group called Intercontinental Assets Group out of his New York City apartment. He's not even 30 years old. Right away, he gets big-level clients like Adnan Khashoggi, who is at the time was alleged to be the world's richest man. He was the Saudi arms dealer, and to give an impression of how significant this figure was in the weapons trade, he earned more in commissions from Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and I think one of the other big military contractors than every other commissions agent in the entire world combined. That's why, there were rumors that he was the world's richest man. In fact, we actually had legislation passed because of how influential he was. He was the one who, in 1983, flew to the National Security Council, to the White House, to orchestrate the Iran-Contra affair. He was the Saudi middleman that was part of this operation where the United States used the Saudi middleman, Adnan Khashoggi, to run guns to Israeli contacts to smuggle into Iran to fight off the Iraqis. It's a bit of a long sequence, but effectively you can think of it as the United States and Israel with Saudi Arabia in the middle. Now, Adnan Khashoggi was one of the major clients of the CIA's BCCI bank, and he was the host of the CIA's offshore operation that was created in 1976 called the Safari Club. In 1975, 1976, when the CIA started getting handcuffs put on it with the Church Committee hearings, Jeffrey Epstein starts his career at Bear Stearns in 1976, the very moment of the biggest shakeup of the CIA in CIA history. At that moment, the Church Committee hearings were ongoing, and the public was seeing, Colby and Angleton holding up a heart attack gun. How the CIA can kill someone and make it look like they died organically of a heart attack. Operation Chaos had just broke about the CIA funding student groups on American college campuses. COINTEL broke. MK Ultra broke. It was one house of horrors after another on everybody's TV that only had 3 news stations. And so Democrats were completely fired up about getting rid of the CIA or putting massive handcuffs on it, which is what they did. They created effectively what's now the Senate and House Intelligence Committees, so there's oversight of the CIA by the people's representatives. The first year Carter was in office in 1977, went through what was called the Halloween Massacre, fired 30% of all CIA operations personnel. They massively cut funding. And so in response to this, you had a set of stakeholders who wanted that CIA dirty work to still be doable, but they didn't have the legal authorization to run it out of the CIA. So what they did is they took the same group of international partners that the CIA had been working with. That includes Saudi Arabia, Israel, the UK, France, at the time Iran, because this was before the 1979 Iranian Revolution. They were all part of this thing called the Safari Club, which got its name from the Mount Safari. It was basically a resort club in Kenya, which was the main hub. Just like Colombia, for example, is kind of the main U.S. government hub for logistics. It was kind of a foothold for our ability to do work in Venezuela or Guatemala or Nicaragua or Brazil. In Africa, Kenya was our main stronghold. And so, but Adnan Khashoggi ran that. This was basically a 7-8 country joint covert operations intelligence network. And it was informal. It wasn't technically the CIA. And it was set up in, you can pull the Wikipedia for this actually, just so you don't need to take my word for it. Like literally the sanitized Wikipedia will tell you everything that I'm saying here. And that network ended up becoming one of the main, so if you start at the top, you'll see that there it is on the right, the Safari Club. It was a covert alliance of intelligence services formed in 1976 that ran clandestine operations in Africa. Now, what they're leaving out here is that it was also Asia. It played a huge role in Pakistan and Afghanistan and the like. But these were all these different countries attempt to offset the restrictions that the Democrats had put on the CIA. When Reagan gets back to power in 1981, you still have these handcuffs on the CIA. You still have the Democrats controlling the House of Representatives. The Democrats did, so there was an international arms embargo. First of all, in 1979, the Iranian Revolution happens, and it's blamed on the CIA being cut back. The CIA helped install the Shah in 1953. They argued that if Jimmy Carter hadn't destroyed the CIA, we would still have Iran as a friendly country. We could have stopped this. We could have nipped it in the bud. We could have had people on the ground. It's Jimmy Carter's fault that he cut the CIA, that we're in this disaster with the world's third largest reserve of oil and gas and this hugely geostrategic country now being an enemy of America rather than a friend. So an international arms embargo was put on Iran, but then Iraq threatened to invade it. And we didn't want Iraq to take it over. So we had to do something illegal if we wanted to help Iran. And it was against international law to give them weapons. But if we didn't give them weapons, it was perceived massive geostrategic, geopolitical earthquake that we'd lived with for centuries. So you had to do one illegal action with the gun running. And then there was an inter-party dispute. The Democrats at that time, the majority did not want to do intervention in Nicaragua. There was an in-party power called the Sandinista government, and there was a rebel faction called the Contras. And Republican donors and stakeholders had interests in Nicaragua and wanted to help the Contras overthrow the Sandinista government. But there was a party dispute. Democrat donors didn't profit from that. And they, at the time, had a fairly robust anti-imperialism kind of mindset and were sick of CIA regime change by the early 1980s after everything that was disclosed in just the previous years. So Republicans wanted to overthrow the Nicaraguan governments. Democrats didn't. Democrats had a House majority, and they passed something called the Boland Amendment, which forbade any U.S. government funds from going to support the Contras. So this put the Republicans in a pickle. By the way, this is what's happening kind of today around Ukraine if you flip the parties. 100% of Democrats vote for Ukraine funding. The Republican Party is split about it. This is the inverse of that was happening in the early 1980s. 100% of Republicans wanted to fund the Contras against what they called the Soviet-aligned Sandinistas. And the Democrats were split. But they successfully passed this Bowen Amendment, so the CIA was in a pickle. How do you run guns to Iran when it's against international law? And how do you fund the Contras when it's illegal to spend U.S. government money to fund them? And so what they came up with is effectively the structure. I think it's the most useful structure for understanding American statecraft and intelligence activity to this day. What they came up with is what they called a structure called the Enterprise, which the CIA Director Bill Casey referred to as a private, self-sustained, off-the-shelf, standalone entity that did not exist within the U.S. government, but was instead, it comprised, the money came from outside fixers who would then effectively channel donor money and black market trade to fund the Contras. So the money didn't come from U.S. taxpayers. It didn't come from U.S. aid. It didn't come from an allocation from the U.S. Department of War or foreign assistance from the Department of State. As it turned out, the money came from, cocaine and a couple of other things. But this was the famous
Freeway Ricky Ross.
Yeah, Gary Webb.
Yeah.
John Kerry, and this was the soup that Jeffrey Epstein was coming up in. And a funny story related to this is that the main airline used to transport the drugs and guns in the drugs for cash for guns operation was a CIA proprietary airline called Southern Air Transport. Southern Air Transport was the proprietary CIA airline, meaning it was owned and operated exclusively by the Central Intelligence Agency. And it was the airliner that all these aircraft moved through. Iran-Contra was basically the early 1980s up until like the mid-late 1980s. It was based in Miami. In 1994, Southern Air Transport, the CIA proprietary airline, which in the intervening time was spun out to not be owned by the CIA, but rather to be owned by someone who had worked for the CIA. At the time, it was owned by the CIA, so pretty thin layer there. But it moved from Miami to Columbus, Ohio, primarily to service the limited.
Oh, I know all about this, Joe.
I have a video on this. And
in fact, look over at Jamie because he's obsessed.
Yeah, and in
he's
fact,
obsessed with Patel.
Yeah, I probably told you about this 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's a great article, I think, Spook Air, and on this. But
how many roads lead back to Ohio?
Most, if not all.
What is this connection with Ohio?
Well, Ohio was, if you remember, kind of the origins of organized crime in the United States really goes back to the Prohibition era, when you had this Midwestern mafia syndicate around Cincinnati, and then it moved into Dayton and Columbus and adjacent to Chicago, and this whole sort of hub around Prohibition. And then Prohibition was 1920 to 1933. When Prohibition ended, all these networks went from black market alcohol to black market drugs, because it was no longer black market. They no longer had a business smuggling alcohol. So they moved into the narcotics space.
Which ones? Which narcotics?
Well, it was primarily opium in the 1930s. This was part of
Opium. Really?
Well, yeah, because in the 1930s was when you had, as we discussed, the Department of War's alliance with Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang, the Chinese nationalists. The supply for, the supply for heroin, for example, or opium, it comes from Asia. It comes from the Golden Crescent, the Golden Triangle, and the way this logistics chain moved was our CIA, War Department-backed rebel groups in Asia. They sat territorially on the Golden Triangle. They would cultivate the opium. They would basically fly it out on military aircraft. It went to Europe for processing. In France was one of the main. This kind of French connection saga, which again Jeffrey Epstein is weirdly connected to. I can tell you about that if you're interested. And then it would go to the basically Italian mafia folks for the transshipment, and you had Italian mafia controlled docks and ports in the United States and New York and New Jersey, and you had CIA protected Italian mafia groups in southern Italy, which at the time were national security protected because they were our allies against the communists. And so you had this drug trade to support foreign policy imperatives. And you can do that, you can run that exercise with pretty much every drug on planet Earth at this point. And it makes it very difficult to stop the drug trade, because by stopping the drug trade, you're running up against something that your own government considers a perhaps unfortunate but necessary logistics hub.
Do you think
for the
that's
money.
happening right now with Mexico?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Well, I mean, think about this. Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago.
The Fast and Furious story is fucking bananas. Tell it to people that don't know, because just the idea that they proposed this and implemented it is so fucking crazy.
Yeah. Well, so this was a scandal during the Obama administration. Eric Holder was the Attorney General of the United States. He had to step down because he was held in contempt of Congress for jumping on the grenade and not turning over the Fast and Furious files. Note to Congress, who wants to be a hero, by the way? You can do the same thing with the Epstein bill with the Fast and Furious files. I think everybody in this war on drugs that we're so gung-ho about, we just captured the president of Venezuela over drugs, it would be awfully nice if you compelled the Justice Department and FBI to turn over the Justice Department and FBI run Fast and Furious files. But what happened was, and I believe this had interagency approval, meaning the White House signed off on it, the Central Intelligence Agency signed off on it, the Department of Defense signed off on it, the State Department signed off on it, the FBI and ATF signed off on it. This was a gun-running operation to send guns to the Sinaloa cartel to have them be able to successfully win a narco-drug war against the Los Zetas cartel. The Los Zetas cartel was pilfering oil pipelines. But remember, Mexico, the oil wealth of the United States is vastly disproportionately concentrated in Texas. In West Texas and Southern Texas, where it shares oil fields with Mexico, effectively. Those oil fields go into Mexico is replete with oil. And there are many partnerships between United States oil companies and the Mexican government, Pemex and all the different, kind of private lines. And this is a big point of geopolitical contention. But the fact is one of the things that organized crime groups do in order to get money for their own syndicate, because they've got effectively military control of a territory, is if a pipeline runs through that territory, they can simply cut open the pipeline and steal the oil. This is, for example, what was happening with our CIA-backed rebel groups in Syria. We're taking the oil. I mean, we would literally, our spunky moderate rebels would, literally cut open Syrian pipelines and take the oil. And this was one of the ways to support it. You can support it with drugs. You can support it with black market oil. And by the way, while I'm on the topic, if you pull up, and I have this on my X, if you type in Institute for Peace, or just type in Institute Peace drugs, the U.S. government, the U.S. Institute for Peace, told the Taliban not to shut down the drug trade after they took power in 2022. They said it would have a devastating, negative impact on the local economy if they didn't keep growing what was then, 95% of the, I think click the next image. Next image. Yeah, here you go. So this is a, we give the U.S. Institute of Peace, at the time we gave them $55 million a year. The U.S. Institute of Peace was created by act of Congress in 1984.
This headline is wild. The Taliban's successful opium ban is bad for Afghans and the world.
Yes. Right. So, wow. Now remember, just about, the Taliban had just taken back power. That happened in the early Biden administration. The Taliban, if folks recall, the CIA was and the U.S. military, as well as their allies and with regional allies, were cultivating the opium on the Golden Crescent for a noble cause, to win the Cold War against the evil Soviets. This was a big part of the funding for the Mujahideen. And this was one of the big scandals that ended up enveloping BCCI, the CIA's bank, because it was non-compliant with any banking regulations. It all moved offshore. The drug money, the drug logistics chain that the CIA built for the Mujahideen then moved through the drugs money laundering chain at the CIA bank, and this apparatus had scaled for 20 years by the late 1990s. When the Taliban, like the Chinese, wanted to shut it down when the Taliban took power in the 1990s. And they did that. They cut the opium down to effectively zero in 1999. And this is all open source. And then, we invade Afghanistan in 2001, 2003. It becomes a U.S. military-occupied zone, and it goes from 0% of the world's heroin to 95% of the world's heroin, all under U.S. military occupation. In fact, we installed their dictator, whose brother was the main drug kingpin of the whole country. And some of this moved through the Cold War CIA-backed Turkish Grey Wolves outfit. And there's a funny quote, I think, in the Michael Hastings article on Stanley McChrystal, where Stanley McChrystal's team refers to Hamid Karzai's funny little hat that he wore. Hamid Karzai was the CIA-installed strongman after we took over Afghanistan. He referred to his hat as the Grey Wolves vagina. I mean, they're basically saying, like, this is the drug logistics orifice. But leaving that aside, what I'm getting to is you have this banking network. You have all these logistics chains. Jeffrey Epstein. First 10, when his come up is made through this whole network. It turns out that Bear Stearns opened a trading desk to clear BCCI transactions in 1978. Jeffrey Epstein's mentor, the person who actually recruited him to apply to Bear Stearns, was a guy named Ace Greenberg. Ace Greenberg then was a senior executive at the time, and then I think in 1978 or 1979 he becomes CEO, so the head of Bear Stearns. So he sets Jeffrey Epstein up with his daughter. So Jeffrey Epstein is a young kid. People wonder, how did Jeffrey Epstein make partner at Bear Stearns so fast? There's a couple explanations. One is the guy who brought him into the firm quickly became CEO thereafter, and Jeffrey Epstein was dating his daughter. The New York Times actually reported this about a month and a half ago by getting the insider testimony of a dozen people who worked at Bear Stearns at the time. And so, he's dating the boss's daughter, but also Ace Greenberg is the CEO, would have to approve all of these transactions, and it looks like he was involved in these clearinghouse activities. What happened was Bear Stearns cleared
What do you mean dating?
about $13 billion worth of BCCI transactions, and it looks like these transactions were involved in the very same Adnan Khashoggi society and Doug Leese, who was a British arms dealer that Jeffrey Epstein was flying to London to meet with and working with all those years. And Bear Stearns was doing it through this entity called Capcom, which was what the Senate report on the BCCI scandal referred to as the bank within the bank of BCCI. So kind of the inner sanctum of. Now that Capcom was owned by Kamal Adam, who was the he was the chief spy for Saudi Arabia. So he was, Bear Stearns, the New York Times reports based on a dozen of these, insider, testimonies. They got like 3 of Epstein's bosses on the record to talk about, what he was doing there. Amazingly, the New York Times does not mention a single deal name in the entire 20,000 word report.
Why did that?
It might not be news fit to print. Also, I can be charitable and say they just might not know. They might think that, I don't think that the New York Times has a pinky of the specialization in Jeffrey Epstein cinematic universe knowledge that your random anonymous egg account on X has. So they might not know about Bear Stearns doing BCCI transactions. They might not know what, if you don't know the material, you don't necessarily know what to ask. That's me being charitable. Also, some of the witnesses may have said that they don't want to talk about specific deal names because that would tarnish, the folks involved in that deal for association with Jeffrey Epstein. There could be a lot of reasons. I'm trying to be charitable here, but the fact is they all said Jeffrey Epstein moved up so fast because he was dating the boss's daughter and he was put on the biggest and most lucrative deals very quickly within the firm. And given the incredible volume that Bear Stearns appears to have been moving through BCCI, and BCCI being the hottest ticket in town then in the late 1970s, it was literally the main vehicle for the U.S. government to covertly launder funds. Capcom, according to the Senate Intelligence Report and the Justice Department investigations, was the main vehicle for funding the Mujahideen. 50% of those trades, and they laundered it illegally, which requires a brokerage, a clearinghouse to prove it. The way this is set up is you have a bank, you've got a money launderer, and you've got a clearinghouse. The bank was the CIA bank, BCCI. The money launderer was the CIA's literal direct partner in this, the Saudis. Capcom was run by the chief Saudi spy master. And then in 1982, Jeffrey Epstein obtained a fake Saudi passport. It was a fake Austrian passport because that was a big loophole passport during the Cold War for spies. But it said his residence was Saudi Arabia. We didn't find this out until 2019 when his safe was raided. But at that exact time, Jeffrey Epstein has this fake Saudi passport. And it's being done to support the CIA-backed rebel group, the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. But that requires a clearinghouse to clear those money laundering trades. They were using these mirrored commodities trades, which is this technique of basically selling to yourself to make money look clean, so that it looks like profit. It looks like you won or lost it in a market trade rather than through drug money. And then they were then sending that on, to Mujahideen. But the fact is at the same time that was happening, Adnan Khashoggi, who had become Jeffrey Epstein's client in the 1980s when he went on his own, was the one facilitating the weapons. You have this drugs for cash for guns. The person, so the bank that's that's turning the drugs into clean cash, that the head of the Saudi spy master is running that part of the banking side, and then you've got the Saudi arms dealer who is moving it illegally into Iran, working hand in glove with the CIA and the National Security Council the whole time. You have a illegal financial enterprise protected at the highest level by the United States government, the U.S. intelligence services, and by proxy, the Justice Department itself. Can you imagine the Justice Department prosecuting it while that operation was ongoing? Any defendant. You asked what are the great reveals in the JFK files, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the case of Rolando Masfer. There's an incredible document in the JFK files that Tulsi Gabbard released last year, which is a CIA document that describes, I think the quote is, massive damage if the Justice Department pursues a criminal case against a guy named Rolando Masfer. If you just type in Rolando Masfer JFK files 2025 release, or like massive damage or something like that, you'll see this. It's an unbelievably incredible document. What it documents is that there was a dispute between the CIA and the State Department. The State Department sets foreign policy. The CIA is supposed to serve covertly the State Department. The CIA is the junior seat at the table. Nobody ever goes from being head of the State Department to head of the CIA. That's a demotion. The CIA is supposed to be kind of I use like the Sopranos. Silvio comes in and shakes down the hairdresser shop or whatever for the money it owes the family. If you are that hairdresser, it's easy to think that Silvio runs the mafia, because he's the one who shows up at your house, breaks your windows, breaks your knuckles, and takes your money. But Silvio's not doing that because he runs it. He's doing it because the person setting the policy of the enterprise, Tony, is the boss of it. The way it's supposed to work is the State Department sets policy, and the CIA does or organizes the plausibly deniable dirty work to achieve it, if that is necessary to achieve that foreign policy. This is why there was a lot of debate in 1948 about whether the CIA should even take on this role. This is this great 1948 George Kennan memo that says maybe we should have a office within the State Department called the Bureau of Organized Political Warfare. And then 2 months later, they decided the CIA would take that. But the fact is it's basically a State Department function, but CIA is supposed to defer to state. But what happened was there was a factional dispute between state and CIA over Cuba policy. The State Department thought that the CIA-backed rebel groups in Miami were being too aggressive and too provocative, too hot-headed, doing acts of terrorism and sorts of things that look bad to the international community. JFK was trying to rein them in. But the CIA, the careers and folks there, wanted to take a more aggressive posture. And so one of the CIA's key assets and ringleaders had a logistics hub with a massive CIA-backed Cuban exile community network at that time in the early 1960s in Miami. Thought that JFK was being too impatient, too cautious. They wanted to invade basically a section of Haiti, departing from Miami, to use that as a base to then do kinetic attacks against Cuba. The State Department learned that this CIA-backed network, led by Rolando Masfer, was going to do this, and stopped it. They had a Customs and Border agent, basically, who was like manning the docks and caught them as like 300 of them were departing to try to take over a part of Haiti to do this. And then the State Department directed the Justice Department to pursue criminal charges against Orlando Massfer. In steps the CIA. And if you can find this memo, it's MAS for, I think it's FERRUR, Orlando Massfer. It's the title of it is like massive damage that would accrue. You can probably also just find it on massive damage. There you go. Estimate of damage which could accrue to CI in Miami through prosecution of the Orlando Massfer Haitian invasion group. Again, we just learned the existence of this document last year. This is from the 1960s. Now, it says, the decision by the Justice Department to seek a grand jury indictment against Orlando Massfer and certain of his associates is a potentially explosive matter which could result in extensive damage to CIA activities in Miami. Recent adverse publicity on the national scene and in the Miami area have added substantially to the already sizable embarrassment potential. Can you imagine what these memos look like for Jeffrey Epstein? Some of the main sectors of danger to CIA equities are described below. Basic national publicity regarding student and foundation topics have already attracted attention of the local press to the CIA in general. Usually any reference to CIA covert activities leads press to check files for references of any such activities locally. However, before this action can be taken, the story regarding, and then he goes over the Pan Am Foundation, the University of Miami, which was what hosted JM Wave. The University of Miami, then the CIA's largest station house in the world, it's called JM Wave, was hosted in a facility off of the University of Miami campus. Again, the biggest CIA station house in the entire world. The CIA, so it goes on to say that, there have been all these, the top paragraph is saying, we're under a lot of pressure, Justice Department. The public is already losing support for the CIA because of all these other disclosures. And it will be disastrous if you pursue the prosecution of him, because Orlando Massfer is going to squeal. So I think if you go down to the next page, it says, as has been the case for the past 6 years, and it says basically the CIA has been working with the head of the president and treasurer of the University of Miami. They're extending the cooperation and all of this. So basically all these touch points that Orlando Massfer's network connects to will be exposed, and they go over all these what were previously redacted CIA cutouts in the area. And then he goes on, the memo says, even if the above circumstances do not exist, we would remain concerned regarding the possible effects of the prosecution of the Massfer group. Although no station agents or persons with whom the Miami station has contractual arrangements are among the persons arrested or those who will be prosecuted, it will be very easy for the defense to drag CIA Miami into the case. The defense has only to obtain testimony, true or perjured, they consider to be true, from one of the defendants, or summon as defense witnesses one or more disaffected former agents of the CIA station in order to begin a chain reaction, surfacing such detail and rumor concerning CIA operations against the Cuban target. Given the sizable reduction of infiltration and a general feeling of frustration and lack of support for Cuban freedom attributed to passive U.S. policy, basically saying it would undermine our, entire operation against Cuba and the American people's support for it if the Justice Department indicts these people who just committed this crime, because they can the whole network is CIA, and they can just call to the stand that their friends and associates had been talking with the CIA about this well before they had done it, and that'll be a massive scandal. Now, that's just one example here, and what goes on to happen is there's a negotiation between the State Department and CIA about whether to bring the case, how to bring the case, how to shape. There's a follow-up memo on this, which is totally incredible. That, I think, is more of the logistics on this. The agreement they reach is that the State Department wins nominally. They do bring the prosecution, but they bring it in a highly limited and tepid way, and they agree to the CIA's demands to limit lines of inquiry, to file motions against entering anything into discovery that might basically reveal the CIA networks in this. And they agreed to have a CIA general counsel person on the prosecution team in order to personally make sure that the Justice Department stays in line. And if something looks like, if the judge grants discovery for something that might reveal the CIA's role in it, drop that line of prosecution so that it can't be entered into evidence. And this is what you see time and again is the
What? No.
is how these networks get protected, whether it's drug cases, whether it's foreign policy scandal cases, whether it's money laundering cases.
What is going on?
I believe in the Mark Ridge case, part of I think his lawyer cited at one point, or maybe it was in his pardon application, the work that he had done for U.S. intelligence services as part of the reason that he should be granted leniency. But the point I'm getting to here is, given Jeffrey Epstein's involvement in the BCCI network, given Jeffrey's involvement in the 1990s with all the foreign policy activities happening in the Middle East at that time, given Jeffrey Epstein's involvement through the early 2000s Clinton era and everything, given his involvement in everything from Israeli to Saudi to British to French high-level government officials, Jeffrey Epstein was investigated by the SEC in the 1980s. He was one of the two people who ran the biggest Ponzi scheme in history at the time in the United States, the Towers financial collapse. Epstein's business partner goes to jail for like 30 years or 20 years or whatever. But Epstein skates completely free. Epstein gets involved in this huge fraud in the U.S. Virgin Islands with this, billion-dollar fraud case in the U.S. Virgin Islands, never prosecuted for any of it. Why is that? Well, one is, he may have, in the U.S. Virgin Islands case, he was sponsoring the campaigns, basically, of the politicians there. The prosecutors answered the politicians. Could be that. But I would be shocked if they're, in 40 years of this Where's Waldo, Forrest Gump, he's always in the room, in 40 years of American foreign policy and intelligence activity, money sourcing for that, for all the crimes that Epstein committed, the concern was the same one they had with Rolando Masfer. Don't bring the case, and if you do, bring it in a highly limited way. And that's exactly what happened in 2006, the first time he was indicted. Everybody was up in arms that it was a sweetheart plea deal. It gave protection to all co-conspirators, known and unknown. And it was swooped in quickly before there was a trial in full, so that lines of evidence couldn't be opened about the network.
It's just crazy that statutory rape is what took it all down, right? Because it's underage hand jobs, right? That's what took it all down.
Yeah, it seems to be what took Jeffrey Epstein down.
Kind of crazy.
Even that has a really interesting geopolitical history. There was a similar scandal in the early 2000s with a private military contractor called DynCorp, which again runs through this Adnan Khashoggi kind of Middle Eastern network. DynCorp got in trouble for trafficking, facilitating the traffic. It was a major U.S. military and CIA contractor for logistics and institutional support and military assistance on the ground for the U.S. military all over the world. They got in trouble basically trafficking underage kids to Middle Eastern sheikhs. And I believe in the early 2000s, and I believe the reason that was alleged by Congress that they did that was to juice the deals with them. That basically, these people who were critical. If you're operating on the ground in Kuwait or, pick your Middle Eastern, country, in order to serve your purpose for the U.S. government to be this outside, plausibly deniable, but extensively infrastructured professional support outfit on the ground, you need the support of the local government. need the support of the local high-level officials. They need to be happy. And there's several currencies for that. There's financial payoffs, and there's other things they might like parties and young women, especially in places where being with a very young female is not illegal. And so what DynCorp, I believe, got busted doing, and you can look up the DynCorp scandal here, was doing this, and I believe their argument was, well, you wanted us to do this thing on the ground. You wanted us to help the U.S. military and kind of covert support nodes that were happening here. We had to do it somehow. This is part of what helped us do that. I would not be surprised if the Epstein trafficking apparatus started with similar motivations. That's not necessarily for blackmail, but because it makes clients or customers or VIP people happy. It makes them owe you something. It makes them want to get involved in a deal you do, even if the deal is not one they would ordinarily do, because they just want to stay close to you because you're their supplier of the thing, of their vice, of the thing that they, want but can't get. If you're a 70-year-old billionaire, you can't walk into a bar and leave aside the underage thing. You can't walk into a bar, and meet an 18-year-old who's, I'm presuming, these things are facilitated at private parties, and it needs to, for a lot of these guys, it has to be discreet. They've got wives, they've got reputations, and
they
there's an aspect of this that plays out at every institution. I worked at a New York law firm, and there's ways that you can make partner. At least this was kind of the vibe that I felt like. Some people make partner because they're really good technically at what they do. They're just amazing. They're just technical whizzes on the minutia of how to structure a merger or acquisition. They're just really great at structuring an offshore banking transaction, or they just know absolutely everything about tax law. There's some people who move up because of nepotism. They're the brother and the son-in-law of a major partner. There's some people who make partner because they know they brought in one client who's just a really big rainmaker. And there's some people who move up because they open doors to partners while they're associates. They introduce them to someone. They host events. They've got, tickets to exclusive things. And the partners just like being around that person because they get access to that person in a currency that they can't get on their own. And that includes hosting, cool, exotic parties, having, attractive women. I've never been convinced that the central role of the Epstein young girl, in my view, sidebar of the Epstein money laundering story is that it was for blackmail. And part of this is because the moment Jeffrey Epstein officially threatens somebody with blackmail, and that person tells his wife, and that wife tells her friends, and that gets out to somebody else that knows Jeffrey Epstein's access goes away overnight. That's the sort of thing that even a rumor of that spreading, and nobody else is going to want to do business with them.
So you think people just assume it's blackmail because that is how you would blackmail someone, especially underage girls?
I think it is very possible that there could have been indirect blackmail, meaning Epstein passes it on to an intelligence service, to a corporate espionage client or something, and they use that for their own purposes. But even then, imagine, for example, if, like on the Bill Gates thing, like there was Bill Gates gets an email, I have a video of you sleeping with this person, and or somebody much lower level. The moment they send that to the press, if in order to, they figure they have nothing to lose. I mean, there's not been anybody in the 7 years that's transpired who said, I was personally blackmailed by Jeffrey. I think, because the moment you do that, nobody comes to your parties anymore. You lose all the access. You lose all the deal flow. You lose all the goodwill that you've generated because this rumor, people are very risk averse, especially at that level.
Right, but just to have it over their head and never use it, though.
Right. Well, I think that what you could have is, because he does his own nefarious stuff, he could compile it so that if they ever threaten him with something, he's now got something on them. And I've seen some correspondence that, in the files that looks like that might not be an impossible
Do
scenario.
you think that's how Jeffrey Epstein got in that position in the first place, that they knew he had this kink?
No, not at all. I mean, Adnan Khashoggi had the same thing. Adnan Khashoggi was running around with dozens of young and apparently underage girls the whole time. I think that Jeffrey Epstein probably learned how powerful that can be through that network, seeing that's what powerful people do, that gives them something that gets them a lot of local influence and wins them a lot of favor.
But that's a very specific illicit desire to want underage people.
Well,
How do you even find out that someone's into that?
Well, I don't think that the majority or anything close to it of the women were technically. I think it was largely
Young.
very young, barely legal, so to speak. And I know that there were cases of underage, but I think
Most of it was just
very, very young, but not like
20-year-old
not like
girls,
13
18-year-old girls.
type thing. And then remember, because this is an international enterprise, and many of the clients are like in countries that don't necessarily have the same norms about that we do. You can very easily see someone getting involved in that just because girls juice deals. And so I don't think that Epstein, I've not seen evidence, and in my view, you don't need any of that to understand the core part of the Epstein story that has relevance to your life today in terms of your own government and the workings of power and corporate finance and the like. But I do think that girls juice deals, and the fact that he had the coolest parties on a private island with the hottest girls is
Also
something
brought
that
in
makes
a lot of intellectuals, stimulating conversations, scientists, all these very interesting people. So that was part of the thing, right? That was the draw.
Try hosting a cool party as a guy with a bad ratio, so to speak.
Sausage party.
With a sausage party. And when you develop a reputation for having attractive women at the parties you host, you become an important person to know in the network. Because basically every male has a desire for attractive women, not saying underage, obviously. But that is like a universal biological desire for men to want to be around attractive women.
And what did they do for gay guys?
I have no idea.
Is that a part of the file or the lore?
I've not seen evidence of it, or if I have, I can't recall it offhand. But again,
the whole point is he's throwing these very attractive, cool parties to get all these people together.
But that's what juices deals.
Right.
If you pick this scenario, Epstein's running a fund. A donor, a colleague, someone that he'd like to do a favor for, or an intelligence service says, hey, we're trying to get a pipeline built in the Middle East. We need a facilitator to help arrange private outside funding for it, so this thing can be constructed. It doesn't look like it's coming from the U.S. government, but the U.S. government will provide some sort of loan guarantee or something on it. But we can't raise enough money to do this It needs to come from the outside, but it would really help American national security, and there's probably something in it for you if you can get this done. Epstein then goes out and says to, then puts out basically, tries to make contact with people in his network who might be interested in that deal. And then goes and so he goes after 5 people. 2 of them are in the space locally. The deal terms look good. They want to do it 100%, no hesitation. And then 2 people say, well, listen, it's a good idea in concept, but I don't know, the risk profile on it looks a little high. This normally would not be something that my team would clear. We, it's interesting, but, it's a little rich for my blood in terms of the risk profile. But Jeffrey Epstein asked them to do it. And Jeffrey Epstein, for the past 3 years of their lives has been the best weekend they've ever had. Has made them feel alive again in their mid 50s or 60s. Has opened all sorts of other deals for them, and this deal might work out. So I'm afraid that if I say no to Jeffrey Epstein on this deal, I'm not going to get an invite to the next party. I'm not going to be able to get laid again with a girl that women I find attractive, or that yada yada, and Epstein hooks those up. I'll get in on this deal just because I want to be in the good graces of Jeffrey Epstein, not because the deal as a standalone thing. It's because it's juiced by the girls, the parties, the lifestyle that Epstein allows you to have access to.
But in the public eye, the narrative is underage girls, and this is the thing that makes it so disgusting. When people talk about it, everyone says "fuck kids on the island." This is the big conspiracy about it, and this is the reason why people are so outraged about it.
My concern with the runaway train on that is that it's a massive manhunt for something that it may be true. To me, it's a needle in the haystack. It might be true. Good luck looking for it. And when I think about it logically, with the role that Epstein played between BCCI, Iran-Contra, Latin American politics, African politics, Asian politics, major world foundations, you don't need. It would seem ludicrous to me that Epstein, doesn't mean it's impossible, but logistically, if Epstein ever directly threatened someone, proactively, that is, if the person tries to blackmail Epstein could, reactively say, well, I've got shit on you too. But proactively and really do someone in like that, and word gets around that happens, everything he built goes, the whole Rolodex finds out. And then even if that rumor if that rumor existed, people aren't going to want to go to the parties, because now that's not like an unfettered good time. That is like, oh, he did this to this guy I know.
Right.
And and the fact that these sorts of things, they have a value.
Not get one single
Way beyond blackmail. They have a value in terms of bringing people in network and keeping clients and customers happy and providing access. And I think that the focus on that. Listen, if there were any sort of receipts whatsoever on that, after all these years, if there was like something really good to chew on that thread, I'm open-minded about it. But my concern is the fixation on this. You think about the sort of pie chart of what the Epstein cinematic universe can tell you about the world. Even if it's true, it's a very, very, very small fraction of that. And this gets back to, in 1999, I mentioned, Jeffrey Epstein FOIA'd the Central Intelligence Agency in 1999 for all records about himself. And then he did it again in 2011. Now, Jeffrey Epstein was not a public figure at all in 1999. He didn't come into public awareness, public attention until 2001, 2002, when he started flying, when he flew Bill Clinton around, post-presidency Bill Clinton around, on his Africa tour around the time of the start of the Clinton Foundation. And everyone was wondering, whoa, who's this eccentric billionaire who is personally flying around on his private jet the President of the United States for the past 8 years? And that's when, the Jeffrey Epstein celebrity story started. But he was a private figure in 1999 when he FOIA'd the Central Intelligence Agency for records. And we just learned this in the files this week. The response, we don't actually have the underlying, what's in the files is a 2011 FOIA response to Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer. Jeffrey Epstein did this through his lawyer using the Privacy Act. This is a way to basically kind of anonymously FOIA the CIA to basically keep communications between the CIA and your lawyer for information you're entitled to under the Privacy Act about yourself. And we don't have the underlying letter in the files, tragically and for whatever reason. But what we do have, because I would expect that to be an enclosure to the CIA response. But the fact is anybody who wants to be a hero right now, I have it up on my X account. I have in the thread that I did on this, the file reference numbers. These are not classified documents. FOIA responses are not classified. So anybody right now can FOIA the Central Intelligence Agency for all records and communications related to the CIA's written communications with Jeffrey Epstein via his lawyer, both in 1999 and 2011. But the 2011, what it says is, we have received your request for your client Jeffrey Epstein's records search under the Freedom of Information Act. We've granted the request to search for all open and acknowledged agency affiliations between Jeffrey Epstein and the CIA. We have run that search, and the answer is no documents are responsive to the request. And then it says in the next paragraph, with respect to your request that touches on classified documents, we can neither confirm nor deny the existence or non-existence of any such documents. So you can consider this a partial denial of your FOIA request. Now, what's so interesting about that is, you may think if you read that Jeffrey Epstein, just requested any public-facing links between him and the CIA, just a general, what do you have on me that the public can search just to see? First of all, the fact they did that alone twice in 1999, 2011 says something. But you might think, okay, well, he just wants to know if other people might think that he's CIA. He's moving up in the world in 1999. He's about to be a massive public figure. He wants to know if other people FOIA the CIA for records on him, what they will see. But it turns out that response to a FOIA, partial granting of the FOIA to look for open and acknowledged agency links, and partial GLOMAR, can neither confirm nor deny existence, non-existence, is a stock CIA FOIA response whenever you FOIA the CIA for someone's personnel files. Which leads to the question, because the fact that the CIA says we consider this a denial of your request for classified, for things that touch on classified matters, means that he didn't just ask for all open and acknowledged links between the CIA and himself. He asked for something. And whatever that thing was, it touched on something classified. There would have been no GLOMAR if there would have been nothing to deny about the request. if it had only been limited to open and acknowledged links. To me, this is a bombshell and should prompt Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey and the 427 members of the House of Representatives and 100% of the U.S. Senate to pass the same bill that the United States Congress did in 1992 for the JFK Records Collection Act, when the CIA was forced by law to stand up an independent auditing body to review all classified records relating to the JFK assassination for the first time ever, and then declassify them over months and years through the work of that independent board. Of the existence of this correspondence we just learned about this week alone should prompt a 427-1 and 100% Senate to do the same thing they just did with DOJ files for CIA-originated files. That's actionable immediately. Who's going to want to be on the other side of that in Congress? No, the CIA's records about Jeffrey Epstein, prolific child sex trafficker, however you want, whatever you see in the Rorschach inkblot test of the Epstein universe. I think it would be very hard to be, if that bill gets introduced, for a sitting member of Congress to be on the other side of it. I think it would pass. And it would legally compel the CIA to turn over what I think are quite possibly, arguably very likely, 40 years of CIA documents referencing Epstein. The CIA would not be doing its job if it didn't have records about Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a counterintelligence threat with all the foreign countries that he was dealing with, if he had been a double agent sort of thing. The CIA would not be doing its job if it was not keeping that. Epstein's network was a key financial and logistics hubs in highly geopolitical sensitive areas of operation of the CIA. The economics division of the CIA, let alone, the operations division, is going to have to, keep analysts informed about money flows in those countries. And when you add in the fact that he represented Anand Khashoggi's money, who was the CIA's main point person for 10 years, the literal central linchpin in his money is being handled, there's no way. And you would now have a legal mechanism to enforce CIA declassification if Congress forces it. Now, the other part of it is, okay, why hasn't the CIA turned this over before? You could argue it's a Rolando Masford case. It would embarrass the agency. It would mean in Congress, their funding is going to get decimated because they're toxic. You can argue it's foreign governments that don't want them. But part of it is the CIA is not allowed to do this unless the Congress forces them. These are classified documents. I mean, it could, charitably volunteer to ODNI by conducting, an internal task force that voluntarily, asks Tulsi Gabbard to declassify these. I wouldn't hold your breath on that. But this is immediately actionable, and it would solve the mystery. All we need is one brave member of Congress to get the ball rolling and stand up that bill. And you can just copy-paste the 1992 JFK Records Collection Act and just substitute JFK for Jeffrey Epstein.
What's your take on the circumstances around his death?
I don't know.
It's weird that they took a guy who is one of the most high-profile defendants ever, and you put him in jail with a mass murder.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy. You put him in jail with a cop who had killed drug dealers. A juiced-up, gigantic cop.
Yeah.
Who was obviously a psychopath. And then 18 days before he died, he complained that guy tried to kill him.
Oh,
yeah.
Shit.
I mean, it doesn't look good.
It's just crazy that this guy wasn't in protective custody. It's crazy that the cameras go down. It's crazy that the footage that they've released is weird because it's missing time.
And it's crazy that it happened under the watch of an attorney general who himself was so deeply embedded in the Epstein network his whole life. I mean, from the weird kind of coincidence of Bill Barr's father, Donald Barr, and Jeffrey Epstein's Dalton School, to the fact that Bill Barr started his career in the CIA during the Iran-Contra operation that Jeffrey Epstein was appears to have been doing the covert money laundering for. I mean, Bill Barr was 7 years. He went to Knight Law School, trained to be a lawyer while he was at the CIA, and then his main job was being the CIA's blocker and tackler to obstruct. He was the CIA's point of contact to Congress during the Iran-Contra scandal that Jeffrey Epstein was so deeply involved in, and was blamed in the press at the time for being the person at CIA blocking Congress from seeing the CIA documents that were so central to the scandal. Then he becomes the Attorney General of the United States, and he writes the pardons of the BCCI officials. Who was co-leading that investigation? Robert Mueller at the time. This is in the early 1990s, first time Bill Barr. So you have the BCCI Bear Stearns multi-billion-dollar operation that appears to me that Jeffrey Epstein was working on, and then took the clients from that deal as his own personal clients when he went private on his own. And Bill Barr is who lets the people from the crooked CIA bank off the hook. And then he becomes Attorney General again, and in 2019, he's the one in charge of the FBI. The FBI answers to the Justice Department. The FBI is the same relationship with justice that the CIA has with state. They're the investigative arm of the Justice Department. So, I think it's hard to trust anyone on this. And I don't know, what kind of file set the Trump FBI inherited after all this time. It's hard to make heads or tails of it. To me, I think getting answers on the things that are immediately actionable, getting the CIA's direct correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein, that I mentioned, a congressional bill that forces that, because if it comes out that there are effectively an entire avalanche of classified Epstein files dating back 40 years, and then you've got the CIA Attorney General, it puts these things in a very different light, depending on whether the thing that has generated so much smoke this whole time, the allegation of protection by U.S. government intelligence and however many others, to know that on physical paper, like we know that the CIA interfered in the Orlando Massacre trial, like we know that the CIA contracted out to mafia hitmen in an attempt to kill a foreign president, like we know that MKUltra actually was real. These things you can't scale. Think of things like a Jenga tower. If a foundational piece is not solid, you can scale a whole architecture of BS on top of it, and if that assumption falls away, this majestic-looking, tapestry of just years and years of effort collapses because the thing you assume to be true, because it looked like there was so much smoke, to know it to be true, that is a solid piece that you can put the next piece on top of. It's there's that quote, 99% is a bitch, 100% is a breeze.
What is that?
It means when you're only 99% sure of something, you always have to agonize. Well, what if it's not true? And I think it is, and I build all this stuff on top of it. The 1% chance that's not true means it would be a real bitch for me to spend years of effort on this thing, for me to spend thousands, millions of dollars, on this thing, when it's based on an assumption that is only 99% likely to be true. But 1%, they've been structured some way different. There might be something I missed in this. Whereas 100% is a breeze. Okay, it's automatic. You can, and things like, this is why document drops like this are so vital. Not even necessarily because they have some single smoking gun that tells you who killed JFK, or, what client Jeffrey Epstein trafficked women to, but because it allows you to put down real Jenga pieces about what actually happened. And that process itself allows you to ask the questions that might get you to those answers.
That makes a lot of sense. Is there anything else you want to add to this? I mean, we could kind of go on for days.
Yeah.
I mean, you spend so much time on this stuff. How do you have that kind of an attention span? It's kind of nuts. I mean, I follow some of your live streams. I'm like, first of all, your recall is insane.
You know, I heard something once, which I think is really helpful. I don't think I'm special in any way like this. I think literally anyone can do this if you just kind of apply this kind of trick. I heard this once, which is that if you read a history book, don't just read it agnostically. Have a theory in mind about what you think this is and how it worked. Even if you are wrong about that theory, what you will find is that names, dates, locations, your brain will remember them forever because they're not, you know, if I'm thinking about something that happened in, I don't know, like November 11th, 1983. Okay, if I see like that date on a driver's license card or something, and I have no theory of mind when I see that, I'm not going to remember that 5 minutes from then. It's going to be like trying to remember a 11-string, number, or like someone's cell phone or something when you don't really know the person, or you've never, you haven't dialed it a million times. But if you have a theory of mind that you are indexing those things in relation to, what you find is that your brain keeps those in that index. So like I've joked, like, because we've talked about this Iran-Contra affair, which was really the creation of this apparatus that we live under today, where because the CIA got handcuffs put on it, everything had to become CIA to get around those handcuffs. The universities had to be, the foundations, the private philanthropic donors, and this is what happened in the censorship industrial complex. It was all wrapped around this. But what you find is like those dates mean something to you because they're placed in relation to something else that happens. I joke that like I index things by Iran-Contra often. Like, for example, if there's, when I was studying about BCCI and I learned, okay, this happened in 1984, I don't just think about 1984 as an abstract thing. I think, okay, well, that means it happened after the meeting between Robert McFarlane and Anand Khashoggi, but before the oil pipeline scandal of Ed Meese. And then so I remember that this thing happened on this date because I place it into that index. And anyone, I think it's something that anyone, I think people organically do it when they're really passionate about something. And, this is an easy thing to be passionate about because it gets to the heart of networks that are the determining power structures of your life. When you look up and then you look up at the thing that you're looking up at and you look up at the thing above that, this is the network you see, whether it's in intelligence, military, statecraft, high finance, private philanthropies, universities, labor unions, scientific research. Doesn't mean it's the Epstein network, so to speak, but it's this layer of interconnected human networks. And I think it's an important history for the American people to have access to so that they can make informed decisions about how they want to change that world, how they can make informed decisions about what to vote for. They can make informed decisions about what kind of industries that they're participating in that they might want to see reformed. And it makes it easy to be passionate about, because if we can get a win here, it'll really change the world.
Well, I think you do a great service, and I think your abilities are exceptional. I think you're selling yourself short a little bit. You're being a little self-deprecating, because it's very unusual what you're able to do. And I think just the sheer amount of time that you've invested in this stuff is kind of mind-boggling.
Well, what would you like to see in this? Like, if you had a wish list? What are the things that are open threads or?
Well, the real concern with me is that it's unfixable, and that this is just a standard way that our government has operated since the 1950s or whenever, and it can't be fixed, and that they'll just gloss over it. A new person will get into office and promise that they're going to implement some reform, and it never happens, and that we just accept that over and over and over again. That's the real fear. The real fear is that there's a slow capture of our democracy to the point where it's just a mere illusion. That's the real fear. And I think a lot of people think that we've already passed the point of no return on that. That's what scares the shit out of a lot of people. And then when you see things that are happening in other countries, like particularly England, which is just rampant crackdown on free speech, and with the arrests from people that are posting things on social media sites, and implementations of there's a new thing that they tried to do, or I think they are doing, this concept of having a limited amount of time so you can drive outside of a zone, and after that you have to pay for it. That's a new thing, right?
Yeah,
I can send
smart
Jamie
cities
that.
type
Yeah.
concept.
I can send this to you, Jamie, because I just sent it to Constantine, because it appears to be real, and it's terrifying.
Your carbon budget.
Yeah, that's nuts. Well, look at what California's doing right now. What California is doing is
Why
they
is it like
are
that?
taking
Stop doing that.
or they're moving forward with this. The idea that you have a tax on the amount of miles you drive now. So instead of just taxing gas like they've always done, now they're taxing you on the amount of miles that you drive. Well, you're already getting taxed on that. If you're driving more miles, you're spending more money on gas.
Yeah.
So you're spending more money on tax. But now they're taxing on top of that, which is essentially they're stealing money.
Yeah.
Where can I find it? Forward here. Jamie, you're on Signal, right?
It is really interesting how that whole thing
I sent it to
started.
Jamie on Signal.
But
But it's crazy that the California thing
Signal.
is bananas. That's it? Oh, it doesn't have the link? Which link? Okay, hold on. Oh, maybe this is it. Hold on.
I think there's a really interesting underdeveloped history around the origins of the climate. 2006, 2005, 2006, 2007, really global warming, climate kind of policy push from the U.S. government that became a runaway train as investor money rushed in. It's my opinion, and I'm open-minded about it, but it appears to be the case, in my view, after a study of this, that the U.S. government, together with foreign allies, pursued this kind of demonization of carbon at a real policy level, hydrocarbon-based fuels, as a kind of geopolitical battering ram against newly resurgent Russia in the mid-2000s, as Putin was getting power back over a bunch of post-Soviet Eastern satellite countries through basically exploiting his leverage around pipelines, and the fact that, it's like the John McCain type quote, right? That Russia is a gas station with the military, right? You hear that a lot. Mm-hmm. Gazprom, the state-sponsored oil company, was like effectively the biggest oil company Gazprom was for gas, but Rosneft and Russia had at one point the largest oil exports in the world. It was the motor engine of their economy, oil and gas, and the relationship between Russian oligarchs and businessmen and Eastern European Russian oligarchs and businessmen allowed that hydrocarbon-based dependency and financial opportunity to let Putin reassert Russian control over Central and Eastern European countries that NATO was trying to turn into Western vassal states essentially. So you had this in the 1990s. This wasn't an issue because Boris Yeltsin was the president, and he was effectively an adjunct of the U.S. government, incidentally through Larry Summers and the Jeffrey Epstein Harvard Network. But so there became this push after Russia's interventions in Georgia and the like, and a big attack on a lot of high-level Republican. Basically, I think this push to try to create a shift in the types of energy the world uses was a way to kneecap Russia's main source of revenue to ensure that the Eurasia, the plan to seize political or vassal state control over Eurasia would continue against Putin's new nationalist and global resurgence. And this includes a bunch of crap that in 2003, 2004. But effectively, then you start to see the U.S. government champion these hydrocarbon policies, and you started to see all of these international forums, journals, regulators openly talking in this mid-aughts period as Russia was starting to reclaim political influence, that these climate policies would be a way to stop Russian power and influence, because it would cripple them economically. There'd be no business, between oligarchs in the different countries for them to even leverage. It would effectively allow us to continue the golden age of the uniparty 1990s moment. And then you saw all these government subsidies to it, tax benefits, free money basically. And then it became a runaway as the market saw that this was a highly protected, incentivized space by the U.S. government.
See, sometimes
they all flooded into it.
Yeah,
now they've got a sunk cost. If those policies change, you've got trillions of dollars in climate finance globally.
Right.
And then these started becoming part of IMF loan, requirements, but now it's like, even if the science is completely wrong, what started arguably as a kind of national security based way to force energy diversification. This is what we put Europe through, the United States, with the sanctions against Russia. We forced them to divest of oil and gas and invest in a basket of alternative energy, cleaner energy supplies. But now it's studying about, and that could be justified climate at the national security level with the science of this way to stop Russian. Highly protected, incentivized.
see that?
Incentivized space by the U.S. And then it became a runaway. It's free money basically. It saw that this was a highly IMF loan, requirements, but now it's like, even if the science is based way to the United States with energy diversification. This is what started arguably as a kind of national security based way to force energy diversification.
I fucking hate this mouse.
It being the case, so you could sell it to the whole world.
There's no concrete proof.
Even if
That's
you
what I hate
prove
the
that
most about this
false,
shit.
at this point there's
It's
so much infrastructure
It's so sneaky. It's
built up
messing
that,
up some clicks only a little bit.
you have this network. You have your
if
hedge
you're
funds.
fucked, just tell me.
Yeah, Bill Gates has a climate fund. Al Gore is a billionaire from this one. Tom Steyer, one of the biggest investors in DNC, the Climate Impact Fund. Michael Bills, who funded the CIA governor of Virginia, Abigail Spanberger. And
then the momentum of it's sort of an unstoppable social narrative now.
Right. Well, and the thing that's terrifying about it is that it has conjoined the diplomatic muscle of the American government and whatever allies abroad with private finance. Like, for example, we overthrew the government of Bangladesh in 2024. The Biden administration did. They ran this whole coup. They did it through the National Endowment for Democracy, a CIA cutout, and a million other orgs on the ground. It was a color revolution street protest. I think they talked about this last time, where literally the CIA sock puppet National Endowment for Democracy sponsored like rap music videos and produced them and put them on YouTube and then worked with the unions, set up like transgender dance festivals to try to get the LGBT community on board against the government, and then giant riots they install. It's effectively but part of the thing that they leaned on in the post-transition government is to agree to these basically like climate finance reforms. And you can, just like the CIA and the oil industry became completely inseparable. I mean, George Bush, for example, Zapata Energy Offshore and the whole Texas oil thing, and to then becoming the Central Intelligence Agency director. I mean, Trump's first Secretary of State was Rex Tillerson. Rex Tillerson never worked in government. The Secretary of State oversees the CIA. He's got the whole CIA portfolio. How's he know? Well, he was the chairman and CEO of ExxonMobil. You can't, the CIA and the U.S. military creates the market for oil companies. You can't get access to the oil unless you either overthrow a government or support against an insurgency political movement, one that will guarantee you favorable terms, access, yada, yada, the whole market. And then the CIA and DOD people will rotate into board seats on those oil companies. And so it becomes inseparable. And my fear about this is that over the past 10 years, the same thing started to happen with the client, the sort of, clean energy side of the, of big energy companies. Like in big oil and CIA for a century. Now you have like big climate and CIA because there's so much money. It's energy, it's the master resource. And so now you've got, what appears to me, CIA intervention in part. Like some of these things you have to wonder, why did the Biden CIA try to overthrow the Bolsonaro government in Brazil? This was a pro-U.S. Political party. It was the person, Lula was tied at the hip with China, divested from all these U.S. contracts, massively reduced the footprint of U.S. aligned policies in the second biggest country in our hemisphere. And Brazil just announced like this $1.3 trillion climate finance initiative. And all of these people all these New York hedge funds and London banks who've skated towards this are in on that. You have, this is a crazy case. One of the biggest beneficiaries of the post-coup Lula's government in Brazil were all of the clean ethanol. George Soros' longest-standing equity investment at that point was a company called Adecoagra, which did clean ethanol fuel alternatives. The problem is it's part of its business. Part of it is it's not competitive on price with diesel-based fuels. So the only way to compete and win that market and make millions of dollars is if the government imposes a mandate, a quota that forces people to buy your product. Well, George Soros co-sponsored those CIA-adjacent National Endowment for Democracy operations all over Brazil. Well, he's holding an equity interest in the thing that day one there's an imposed mandate to use those climate products. It's the same thing in Africa. You have like CIA regime change to force clean energy companies so that the people who sponsor the donors who sponsor the politicians who pick the staff of the CIA enacts policies that makes money for those hedge funds invested in climate finance.
So fucked up.
I think that's what's happening in California. Without the regime change element. I think it's the kind of, I think you have investors who profit from this, and the only way those investments can be profitable is if government imposes mandates, quotas, and bans on alternatives to that product. That's kind of the way the vaccine market works.
Did you get that link? Yeah, just play it.
Their little 15-minute city, and they are now charging people for leaving the city. You get 100 free days. They call it a free day. You get a free pass to leave the 15-minute city. And if you exceed your 100 free days, you have to pay the US dollar equivalent of $93 per day. And if you live outside of the 15-minute city and you want to travel into the 15-minute city, you get 25 free passes. Free move. Oh, the government's giving you free movement capability. You get 25 free passes, and if you exceed those 25 days, it's $93 a day. And how are they tracking all this? Oh, there's not a man at the gate. They're not writing up tickets or having police officers set up. Oh no, they are monitoring you with digital AI surveillance and cameras. And then they're automatically finding you. This is why we have to be against the clock cameras in the United States. They're not just speed trap cameras. This is why we have to be against the Palantir full of government database. This is why we have to stand up and raise awareness and bring attention to these matters instead of arguing with each other and NPCs on the internet over left versus right issues or my side, your side. They are keeping us artificially divided because they're setting up this infrastructure in the United States right now. Divide and conquer. We are in the division part of the divide and conquer agenda. Conquer is next. You think it's bad now? Wait till you have to pay $100 a day to leave your 15-minute city. Conspiracy.
Right. So only rich people are going to be able to afford that. It's just like the meat thing, right? It's like, you know, the irony of Australia being a prison colony, and now you've got, it's like the homeland in the UK. But I mean, look, the UK just got rid of like jury trials for a lot of cases, and has 12,000 speech arrests a year, and some people arrested for what seems like even holding up their own country's flag at an opportune moment or silently praying. And we need to liberate the British people. I think it's unbelievable that, I mean, we call it perfidious Albion, right? British statecraft has been so pernicious to the American people in the past decade. It was Russiagate. The entire 3-year special prosecutor saga was because of a British spy, Christopher Steele, and an Iran-Contra veteran, Stephen Halper, residing abroad at Cambridge to kick that off. And then the British government conspired with the Biden administration to create, to conjoin the U.S.-UK censorship industrial complex. America First Legal, Stephen Miller and Gene Hamilton's non-profit law firm they started, obtained these incredible documents that showed a planning meeting between the British government and the Biden administration, attended by the CIA, the National Security Council, USAID, hosted at the White House, and it was the UK Digital Commission. They brought a huge slide deck of all the ways that their new censorship law,
now that is
they call
just
the
blatant
Online Safety Act, the OSA, would effectively help throttle misinformation in the United States. Like, basically, it was like, you scratch your back, our back, we'll scratch yours, and it was this, U.S. Democrat Party, UK Labour Party alliance. Meanwhile, the Biden government was paying British censors. The Global Disinformation Index, which
you know that
killed like the ad, revenue for they went after Daily Wire, Federalist, 1 million conservative news sites and social media accounts, and went after the social media platforms in the United States. They're British black ops by their own language. CCDH was, but they were funded by our government to censor our voices, but laundered out to the UK. And I think we need to fundamentally restructure that special relationship. We've had that relationship for a long time, totally unquestioned. I
spent money on you, bitch.
We can't farm that out. And if that's not addressed and we don't fix that relationship, I think we can't really fix our own system unless we cut out some of the poison that we inject from the outside.
Well, Mike,
funny how I fucking
people a
bought
lot
a
to
wired mouse.
almost too much. But If anybody wants more, your X account is amazing. You're tireless. I don't know how you do it, but thank you for doing it. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate you coming on here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Nothing but fun from here. I mean, look, it's fun. I mean, guys, the world is opening up, and we are seeing behind a looking glass where there has been a veil of secrecy for 60 years about some of these things, for 10 years about some of these things. So don't get too black-pilled. Something has happened that has never happened before, and you are alive to experience it. So,
Hey, you know
try
what?
to enjoy the ride.
Very funny to end on. This all came out in a report, quite a recent report just a few months ago, which led to the resignation of Tim Davis, the Director General. And he resigned ostensibly because of that Trump clip, which, by the way, that wasn't the first time they did it. There was another clip about a year before in a different program that did the same thing. Took the clip, re-edited it, and made it look like he had said something he absolutely had not said. So I think the BBC quite obviously has an ideological bias, if not a party political bias.
But that's more than a bias.
Well, it's misleading, right?
Yeah, it's completely deceptive. You're editing something and they took out a giant chunk of his speech.
Yeah.
I forget how many minutes it was.
They left like 45 minutes or something. Like, so he said
something crazy like that.
Yeah, he said it made him look like he was saying go and commit the right. Yeah, exactly.
And instead, he was in tongue in cheek talking about the very fine senator, that they're doing a great job, the senators and congresspeople, and all this other stuff.
It's so weird.
That you have to fight like hell to keep your country.
I mean, no offense, but you can find daft stuff that Trump says pretty easily, right? You don't need to edit that stuff down.
Well, it's because they had an opportunity to, like what we were saying earlier, we were talking before the show, you can put out a narrative and it doesn't have to be true, and then that's the one that sticks. So that's the one that spreads wide, and then when all these years later, they have to have this, trial, and everybody finds out it's not true. But the damage is done. I mean, that's what they did with Trump during the whole Steele dossier.
Yeah.
The hookers and peeing on people and all that crazy shit. Remember that?
I remember the idea that he'd hired hookers to urinate on the bed that was once occupied by the Obamas.
Something along those lines.
Now, the reason I didn't believe that is I don't think Trump is that avant-garde. I don't think he's that creative. Like if he'd have come up with that, I'd have been actually applauding that. That's kind of amazing. But obviously he didn't do that.
It's not even something to applaud. That just sounds
like a work of art.
Ridiculous. Right.
Get urination on the bed of your enemy through the medium of prostitution. I think that's kind of an artistic thing to do. But I don't think he did it. He obviously didn't do it. None of it's true.
Right.
But you put that... But isn't that weird that in particular... That's like something that I don't think anyone seriously could believe.
Well, there's plenty of people that believed it. And
really?
They don't have to believe it. They just say it. Like, that was the whole point about, the trial where he got arrested and convicted of 34 counts that are a felony, none of which are actually a felony. It's all bookkeeping deception. That was the paying off of the girl.
Yes.
So now you can say he's a convicted felon. You can just say that. And even though all those counts were misdemeanors, all of them had passed the statute of limitations.
Exactly. Yeah.
But for some reason, through no legal way that anybody could ever really honestly explain, they decided to label it a felony. And it was just to turn him into a felon.
I saw even left-leaning anti-Trump lawyers saying this is not how the law should work.
No.
You can't artificially elevate a misdemeanor to a felony outside the statute of limitations. It's crazy.
The thing is, if you do that, they're going to do that to you.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to give that kind of power to the Republicans? And now when they're in office, they're going to start doing things like that? Are we crazy?
Well, also, this really bothers me. Like, one of the key things that I think happened over the past few years is this complete lack of fealty to the truth from both sides.
Right.
It's whatever is convenient matters more. A complete lack of intellectual curiosity. A complete lack of investigating and looking and thoroughly checking. And by the way, with the BBC, that really matters because unlike the news media here, which can be as partisan as it like, the BBC is the state broadcaster. It's got a responsibility by charter to not be, to be balanced, to be even-handed, and it completely failed. And I saw today, just this morning, some people, we've got all the mania about the Epstein files at the moment. Some activists have now said, J.K. Rowling once invited Epstein to the opening of her play. Never happened. But because there's a furore about Epstein at the moment, they're just saying it happened. It gets spread all over the place.
That's all you have to do.
And that's all you have to do. And then that gets repeated. Oh, didn't this happen?
I know.
Like what you say about Trump is right. I always hear that he's a convicted felon. He's a convicted felon. Well, why don't you pause for a minute and assess whether or not that conviction is sound, or whether it was politically motivated, or how helpful that is? But like you say,
Also, it's such a dangerous precedent to
Right.
set. It's
Yeah.
terrible. Like, if you do that, look, right now in the United States, the media predominantly leans left, except for Fox News. The mainstream large-scale media. I guess CBS is probably going to be more right now.
Yeah.
It seems like it's in the process of that. But for the most part, when you watch CNN, if you watch MSNBC, if you watch the mainstream news, it's very left-leaning.
yeah,
But if right-wing people started, if it was like more common for the news to be right-leaning, and then they started doing the exact same thing about a left-leaning candidate,
yeah.
this is so dangerous. And the idea that the left doesn't recognize that, which are the people that have always been in support of free speech. It's never been a right-wing thing to support free speech
Right.
until now.
Yeah.
It's always been a left-wing thing. When I was a kid, it was famously the case of the ADL, defending Nazis having the right to protest and saying, look, we think what they're saying is abhorrent, but it's very important that you get the right to say whatever you feel, and then the way to combat that is with much better, more concise speech that's much more logical and makes sense.
Yeah.
And this is what you do. This is what debate is for. We've always known this.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree. I'm so dispirited by that very thing that you've identified. That the left used to be about this. The left used to be all about. I mean, that example you mentioned of Skokie, wasn't it, in Chicago? The Nazis marching through Skokie, and the ACLU saying, we're defending this. There was a book by a guy called Arya Neer, who was the head of the ACLU, called "Defending My
Yeah,
Enemy."
it wasn't the ADL. It was the ACLU.
It was
right?
the ACLU, and he was saying, he's Jewish. He's got family members who died in the Holocaust. And
Right.
he's writing a book saying, I'm defending neo-Nazis' right to free speech, not because I support them, but because I don't. And I want to defend the principle whereby I can tackle them, and that's speech.
Right.
So, in other words, the principle is so much bigger. I mean, the thing that I think has been lost, and now, by the way, the ACLU, complete about turn. I mean, there was a lawyer for the ACLU tweeting about how he wanted Abigail Schreier's book banned, and he said, this is the hill I will die on. That's a guy called Chase. Or was it a guy? I think it's a trans activist called Chase something, I can't remember. Anyway, but the point is, how far have you fallen? When it comes to these free speech issues, left or right, it's nothing to do with it. It should be about this principle. It's not whether you agree with what they're saying and the substance of what they're saying. It's whether you want the principle intact. And that principle applies to us all. The very same principle that allows the Nazis to say all their crazy stuff is the principle that allows us to challenge it, to tackle it.
Well, it's a very short-term win.
Right,
It's
right.
basically they're playing chess and they decided, I want that rook no matter what. And then they
Right.
just sacrifice their queen. Like, look what you've
Let's
done.
go, bitch.
Look what you've done for this short-term victory. You're essentially tanking civilization for a decade where we have
Yeah.
to sort this out and let the ship wash itself back and forth until it rights.
Yeah, so how do you ensure that it's not going to happen to you? Like, I think about that. There was a National Conservative conference in Brussels about a year and a half ago. The local mayor said, I don't like this, and he had the police rush it, shut it down. And you had mainstream right-wing figures like Nigel Farage, Suella Braverman. How do they not think, hang on a minute, if we establish that precedent, where you can just shut down your political opponents through the use of police force, how will that not rebound on me? How will that not happen to us?
Well, it's just the argument that they're using right now for Trump going after his political opponent.
Right, because they opened that Pandora's box, right?
You guys did that with him.
Yeah.
And everybody was saying how damn dangerous it is.
Yeah.
You can't fucking do that. Even if you hate the guy. If there's a real crime that you can get someone on, but when you take a crime like the bookkeeping stuff
Yeah.
and turn it into a felony that could put this man in jail for the rest of his life for doing something that turns out to be legal, you can pay people to shut up.
Yeah.
And this is it's so weird that people, for this short-term gain,
Yeah.
are willing to tank, which is essentially this whole structure of our civilization that allows free discourse. You need it. It's so important. So important to be able to communicate and talk. If podcasts didn't exist, there was no way to talk through ideas other than mainstream news. We would still be stuck in some very bizarre 1990s or 1980s narrative about how the world works.
Yeah.
We would have real problems. We'd have real problems if there wasn't independent journalism like on Twitter and on wherever they can post.
Yeah, so why don't they get it? I mean, we've had like people in left-leaning papers in the UK calling for Elon Musk to be arrested because
Yeah.
he's allowing free speech on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Like, what?
Well, their offices
why?
got raided today in
Did it?
some country. There was a country where X's offices got raided. I think one of the things was they somehow or another I think something had to do with child pornography.
Where was that? France.
France. Fresh
Wow.
investigation into Grok. And what is it? What are the
Oh, so you know what this is all
See,
about?
here it is.
Yeah.
suspected offenses including unlawful data extraction and complicity in the possession of child pornography?
Yeah, but that's not what this is about. This is because people have been misusing Grok to like put bikinis on women they like, or even in a few horrible cases, creating child sex.
You can
stuff.
wait a minute, you can't create child pornography on
I don't think you
Grok.
can. No, or at least I think that's very much been shut down and safeguarded, right? I think that's what's happened.
I mean, unless there's like some sort of a loophole where you can get it to do it. Among potential crimes, it said it would investigate were complicity in possession or organized distribution of images of children of a pornographic nature, infringement of people's image rights with sexual deepfakes. Okay, the sexual deepfakes.
Yeah.
So sexual deepfakes is like if you put Hillary Clinton in a bikini and made her hot. That's a sexual deepfake.
Okay.
Right? Fraudulent data extraction by an organized group. I think you can still do some of that stuff.
You can put people in bikinis.
Yeah, I think you could do that. So, like, if you wanted to take Shaquille O'Neal and put him in a bikini, you could say you're sexualizing him.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess you can do that.
Yeah.
So, but that's why. So that'll be why. You know, recently Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of the UK, said he wanted, or was considering, or not necessarily he was going to ban X, but it wasn't off the table. It's something like as though he's going to do that. But this is always the excuse. Like,
Yeah.
we're protecting children.
Right.
And look, no one wants that sort of stuff, right? No one wants deep fakes of kids, obviously. But there's I mean, looking at the stats on that, there's far more child sexual exploitation on Snapchat, for instance. But they don't go after Snapchat, because Snapchat isn't the form where Keir Starmer is getting criticised every single day and brutally hauled over the coals by people checking his facts. One of the best things about X recently is the community note. Checking
Yes.
journalists and politicians in real time with facts. They hate it. They
Yes.
hate that. So no wonder they're going after X.
Yeah, Biden got cooked by community notes multiple times.
Yeah.
To the point where the administration was taking down posts.
Yeah. So did the Guardian, the left-leaning newspaper. It flounced off X with a big statement saying, "We're going to Blue Sky. We've had it. We're off to Blue Sky." It was such a flounce. And of course, everyone was retweeting all their community notes. They had loads of them.
Of course.
Just absolutely loads of
Because
them.
it's not true. And, you know, especially when it's open to the whole world.
Yeah.
And people that aren't stuck under your guidelines, like in America, we can just talk shit.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why it's in France probably has a lot to do with Candace Owens.
Oh, yes, that makes complete sense.
Yeah,
That might be
Brigitte
it.
Macron, and like,
Yeah.
I mean, how many times did that get shared?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that is,
That makes sense of it now.
by the way, there's a real quick way to solve that. Open chromosome test.
Yeah.
Go ahead and
I
do
thought you
it.
were going to be a bit more graphic than that.
Well, you don't have to. do
No, you don't
that,
have to.
Because that doesn't really solve it, because you could, unless, I mean, there's no operation, but if she's
Yeah.
gone through a surgery, then, you know, you can show a picture, and it's probably pretty realistic, especially, when was the last time you saw a 70-year-old lady's cooter? you
Last
know?
week.
Oh,
Yeah,
congratulations.
I'm just interested in this sort of.
Well, you know, you're allowed to be curious
Yeah.
in this country.
That's actually a really good example, though, isn't it? Of the just something so obviously not true, just going all over the
Yes.
world, like in a matter of moments.
Is it not true, though?
What, that Macron's wife is a man?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not true.
100%?
Well, you know, the burden of proof is on those who want to say that it is true.
The
I would
reality
say
of the
that.
story is weird enough without it being true. Like the
Right.
40-year-old man and
Wasn't she his
she
school
was
teacher?
40. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was 40. If it is actually a woman, she was 40 and he was 15. That's crazy.
And everyone says, well, they're French. That seems
Right.
that seems to be the thing.
What a wild country.
That's people just say that's the way it works in France. Yeah, but again, look, I would say with all of this stuff, you need some sort of proof. You need
Right.
when you wasn't it the Carl Sagan thing about extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence? I think that's a pretty safe diktat. The idea that okay, anything could be true. You know,
Right.
or, you know, there have been crazy conspiracies that turned out to be true. So I would never rule anything out. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to make a claim like that, you better be damn sure you've got really solid evidence.
Yeah,
about
she's
that,
got
right?
hours-long documentaries on this.
Yeah, and are they
It's so
persuasive?
weird. I haven't watched them.
I haven't watched
You think I have that kind of time, dog?
What you should do, you should do your research before you're part of the problem. Outrageous.
I can't do research on that. I want to wait till it plays out in court.
But whenever I do research, like I'll give you the example from this week, just because I'm reading it now. A woman's written a book claiming that Shakespeare was a black woman.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah. So this is a major spoiler alert. Shakespeare wasn't a black woman.
Crazy.
Yeah. I've got the book. I'm reading the book now. It is worse than you imagine. Part of the
How
evidence.
could it be worse than I imagined?
Because it's obviously not true, first of all.
Of course.
But she basically says in the book that it's important that it should be true, and therefore,
What?
yeah. And in fact, the book opens with a picture of Shakespeare as a black woman, which was drawn by the author. That's so.
Is it a good drawing?
No, it's okay. I get. I don't want to mock someone else.
Can I see it?
If it's out, it's the front. It's the first. Oh, that's the
That's
book.
actually pretty good.
No, that's no.
That's a black woman?
No. That's a portrait of Amelia Lanier, who she says was Shakespeare, and she says that the portraits at the time were whitened to disguise her blackness. In the book itself,
Convenient.
in the book itself, you won't be able to get in the book, I don't think, Jamie. But in the book itself, there's a sketch that she's done. So it's like, I can imagine a publisher saying, "Oh, what evidence have you got?" And she's like, "Oh, well, I'll go and draw it for you." And that's sort of what.
Oh, she's black and Jewish?
Yeah, black Jewish. Well, actually, I mean, Amelia Lanier was part Moorish, but wasn't black, and she wasn't particularly dark skinned.
And she was Jewish as well?
Yeah, part Jewish.
Okay, so who is this woman that they're saying actually was Shakespeare?
So she's called Amelia Lanier, or Amelia Bassano. And one of the arguments is that Shakespeare at the time, if she was a woman, wouldn't have been able to get published, because women couldn't get published. But Amelia Lanier was published. She had a book of poetry. So all of this stuff falls apart like in 2 seconds flat. And she, all right, this is the best one. She even says in the book that the word Shakespeare is an anagram of a she speaker. I'm not making that up. That's what she says. I mean, listen.
What a cover-up. How'd she crack the case?
Well, actually, it's an old theory. It's like a 20-year-old theory.
Is it really?
I tell you,
20 years old.
She's just sort of rehashing it now for this identitarian post-woke world where we're all like, we're desperate for Shakespeare to be a black woman. And it's so...
That's so fun.
It's so pathetic. This was my first encounter with conspiracy theories, because my background is... I did a doctorate in Shakespeare. My background was teaching Shakespeare back in the day, like before I did comedy and before I did anything else. And it was the conspiracy theorists around Shakespeare saying Shakespeare couldn't have written his work. They are the most intense, the most angry, the most evidence-free cohort of people who can... They're more angrier than the woke. I promise you. Like, I've tweeted,
Really?
I've written stuff about Shakespeare online. I recently did some lectures about Shakespeare for the Peterson Academy. I'm really into help. I love the Peterson Academy. I love what they're doing. And I did these Shakespeare lectures. And the conspiracy theorists were onto me online, saying it wasn't Shakespeare. The guy from Stratford didn't write this, and what all these theories have in common is they've just made. There's no evidence. There's no evidence. The key point about Shakespeare is if you're going to say it wasn't the guy who everyone thought it was, you have to answer one key question: why does everyone who knew Shakespeare, wrote about Shakespeare, say that it was?
Can I stop you? Because I'm confused.
Go
I
on.
didn't even know that there was a conspiracy about Shakespeare.
Oh wow, yeah, there's lots.
I had heard one person say that Shakespeare wasn't real and that it was really someone else's work that he plagiarized.
Yeah.
I had heard that.
So
but I
there's-
never even bothered to fuck around with it.
Well, it actually came from America, as you guys. Of
course.
It was
We're the best. We're number one.
There's a guy called Looney, actually, from America.
That's hilarious.
That's his
You
name.
gotta listen to that guy?
So we're going back like 60, 70 years or something, but he came up with this idea that Shakespeare was actually an aristocrat called Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford. Problem is, Edward de Vere died in 1604. That's before Macbeth, that's before Antony and Cleopatra, that's before Coriolanus, that's before The Tempest. So he managed to, I think they get around it by saying he wrote these plays, and then he died, and then
And
the plays got-
Shakespeare found them?
or something. Yeah, so even though some of those plays actually have cultural references from the time after De Vere's died, but it doesn't matter. Maybe he was a prophet as well. But all of the you speak to these people, you'll see what I mean. Edward de Vere, some people think it was Francis Bacon, some people think it was Christopher Marlowe, some people think it was Elizabeth I. Like all of the candidates they put up, right? The key thing is they're all aristocrats, they're all posh. Why? Because Shakespeare was a middle class, lower middle class, not very rich, didn't go to university, came from the Midlands, up and coming guy and they say, well, how could someone like that write about kings and lords and ladies? It's snobbery. They're basically saying working class people can't do art. Really, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be going after all these aristocrats.
And it's the opposite in America, oddly.
Is it?
Yeah. So if you were a Rockefeller in America, you're from the Rockefeller family, and you wrote an amazing novel, no one would believe it.
Right. Okay.
They would
So
say,
okay.
no, that has to be like some guy or some woman who's like grinding, drinking coffee, and smoking cigarettes alone in their apartment to write something that's brilliant.
So I wonder what it is about the UK. Well, although, like I say, a lot of it comes from America. And is it just the need to tear down an icon? Is it that? Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, I get it now with this woman who's saying Shakespeare was a black woman. I get that at the moment because we're in this moment of identitarian, group identity mania, right? So that makes sense. She's got a political reason why she wants to be a black woman. So I kind of understand that more. But what is it? I think it might be more to do with the idea that this guy changed civilization, changed literature. No one else has achieved what he achieved in life. He's up there with Michelangelo, Bach, all of that. Let's tear that down. Let's tear down Western civilization. Let's say none of this is based on anything. This is all untrue.
Right.
I think it's to do with that innate iconoclasm, that innate, just tearing down the great things about our culture.
For sure, that's always been the case, and people always want to tear down idols. They want to tear down, whoever it is, no matter what. I was watching this video we were talking about the other day. This woman talked about how the Beatles were terrible.
Right.
And this woman was not very articulate, not particularly interesting, doesn't seem that compelling.
Yeah.
And she was going on and on about how bad the Beatles were like.
Yeah.
And you're not going to convince anyone. It's just not going to work, but people are going to fucking try. They're going to try no matter what, no matter who it is. Hendrix sucked. I've heard that before.
Oh, really?
Hendrix sucked. Stop.
But at least that's based on an opinion, right? There's a difference between saying Jimi Hendrix sucked and Jimi Hendrix was actually a woman from Liverpool called Maud.
Well, you know the theory about Jimi Hendrix in America. Do you know that?
No.
Okay. So it's the people that are like deep into the CIA.
Okay.
CIA conspiracies. And what is it called? Strange Tales from the Canyon? Is that what it's called? The book? So there's a book there's a bizarre connection between a lot of the countercultural figures of the 1960s and the intelligence community. One of them is Jim Morrison's father, was like a high-ranking military officer. And then there's different people from different bands that were like a key part of the countercultural movement that all had parents that were either in intelligence communities or closely connected to it.
Like a
Weird
suspiciously...
scenes inside the canyon. It's a crazy book. It's fun. It's kind of fun.
Is it crazy as in, like, the revelations are crazy, or that it's just not true?
Well, they make some broad leaps, right? So there's a lot of, and then a year later he died in mysterious circumstances, or a year later he died from suicide, or a year later he died from an overdose. Well, okay. You're hanging out with a bunch of people that are doing drugs all the time, and they're all ne'er-do-wells, and they're all hanging out in Laurel Canyon.
Yeah.
And if you don't know Laurel Canyon, at least at the time, I mean, when I first moved to Hollywood, it's like all the weirdos would live in Laurel Canyon.
Right.
Like all the weirdos were like right there above Hollywood, and there was all these crazy parties up there. It was like Laurel Canyon was nuts.
And they all knew each other, right? So they're all part of that circle.
So,
Okay.
I mean, this was like when I moved there in the 90s, this was the case. My friend Dave Foley had a house up there.
Right.
And it was like all these kooky people. He was telling me about all these kooky parties and all this different shit. It was like Laurel Canyon was always like kind of, so of course a bunch of people are going to die.
So what's the theory?
A bunch of people are going to be connected to bands and different counterculture movements. The theory is that the CIA sort of engineered this culture to, I don't know why. I'm not exactly sure because I haven't gotten all the way through the book. I'm like only way down.
Are you still reading? Okay.
No, I pick it up every now and then. It's just like, it's too kooky.
It's not grabbing you.
Well, you can't make Jimi Hendrix in a lab, okay?
Yeah.
You can't. It's just, you can't fucking do it. You can't make someone that good. It's not possible.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that if they did, why haven't they done it since? Why don't they do it all the time?
Right.
Because
Well,
the greatest guitarist of all time, and you're telling me the Central Intelligence cooked that guy up?
So they invented him, like he's like their clone or something. They
Well,
created...
I just think that they had some sort of an influence on these people, on Jim Morrison. Like, there's a thing about Morrison, the Morrison one. Like, what is the connection between Jim Morrison's dad and the intelligence agencies? There's some, like, tangible connection with Jim Morrison's dad. But wouldn't you just normally assume that if your dad was some high-ranking military guy, first of all, never home.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are you? You're out running around with your friends, smoking cigarettes and fucking drinking, and you're in a band, and it turns out you got a lot of angst and pain because you're being neglected as a child because your dad works 16 hours a day trying to fuck the country over. And so what do? You go counterculture. It's
Right.
like, it's so common. The preacher's daughter, she becomes like a harlot, right?
So there you go, high-ranking US officer with, yeah.
Right.
But that is, okay, but again, like this is a perfect example.
Wow, he's involved in the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Whoa.
But that's not proof of anything.
No,
That's not-
no. But his dad is. His
Yeah,
dad.
but this is the thing. They'll take something like that. They'll take various strips of coincidences and they say this leads us to this conclusion. But all they're doing
Of
is
course.
coming up with a conclusion first and working backwards. Like this sort of stuff, you see it again and again.
So this is how this connects with intelligence agencies. McGowan, I guess that's the author. Core move is to group Morrison's father with other Laurel Canyon musicians' parents who worked in military, defense, or intelligence-linked roles, and to frame this as evidence of a broader covert program around the 1960s rock scene.
Come on.
Yeah.
So are you saying that the CIA were trying to influence the culture through the medium of rock music,
Uh-huh.
and that's somehow tied to espionage and they also have
Like studio.
what's that?
What?
Hear a lot about that place. There was a film studio in Laurel Canyon too.
Oh, well, it's a bass. It's an actual bass.
What they were
Yeah, Jared
filming
Leto.
A lot of films.
I was talking to Jared about that. I had dinner with Jared Leto one night. He's very cool, by the way. Really nice guy. Very normal. And by the way, he looks like he's 30. He's 50 years old. It's crazy.
Moisturizer.
What are you doing with your fucking skin? You look great.
Lookout Mountain
Yeah.
Laboratory Air Force Station.
So he bought that place and converted it into a home. That's where he lives. It's a dope spot.
Soundstage.
Looks quite nice.
Soundstage, film laboratory, 2 screening rooms, 4 editing rooms, an animation and still photo department, sound mixing studio, numerous climate-controlled film vaults.
And this is connected to the conspiracy somehow.
Well, this was an actual military base.
Located by that name.
Okay.
So this Air Force station, whatever it was, I wonder what they were doing. Like, why did they need all that film capability? Why do they need to be
In
in?
theory, I guess, so, like when they would show the atomic bombs going off and would play it in the movie theater for people to see it. That's how they would make the actual, reels and whatnot.
Well, that makes sense, right? Makes sense that they were right there in Hollywood if that's what they were doing.
On top, I don't know what other things they made. Like here's the still.
Oh, okay.
Lookout Mountain Laboratory.
So it's just a studio then? A special
Yeah,
effects
but
studio?
it's in that same neighborhood at the same
Yeah,
time.
but so what? I mean,
I know.
I think with all of it...
He's not arguing for it.
Yeah,
what
God
of
damn
it
it, Jamie.
The so what of it is there wasn't that many of them to begin with, and just they all happen to be in the
But
same.
you don't think with all of this
Down
stuff,
the street from each
like,
other.
again and again,
It's odd.
the pattern is either there's gaps in what we know, and people decide to fill them in themselves, because there's kind of comfort to that. There's also some kind of comfort with, I know something that no one else does. I've got the answer. There's a status element to that. I remember I read a book when I was a kid, like teenager, called The Sacred Virgin and the Holy Whore. And it was about, sort of books I read. And it was about Jesus, and it was trying to prove that Jesus was a woman. And as you're reading it, you're thinking, yeah, Jesus is a woman. I can't believe look at that. And then you get to the end and you think, what the hell did I just read? And it's that thing of, you can marshal any kind of half-baked fact, or you can marshal certain things that we can see and fill in the gaps yourself and lead to a crazy conclusion. What concerns me isn't so much that people do that, because people have done that forever, as long as they've been human beings, is that now people are leaping at it and falling for it in a way that I haven't seen. Maybe it is just social media, right? But
It is.
Can I give you an example of this? So,
Yeah, please.
a recent one which I just thought nuts. Did you see the portrait of King Charles III by an artist? I think his name is Y-E-O. It's a big red portrait which currently hangs in Buckingham Palace.
Oh, I have seen that. It's crazy.
If you take a quarter of it, invert it, flip it, add a bit, and squint, it looks like a goat devil, right?
Yeah.
But you have to do a lot of steps to find the goat devil.
Well, of course,
and you
it's a
could
puzzle.
You could probably.
How dare you?
I'm sorry.
How dare you dismiss that puzzle? Let's show the photo and show how it's done. 'Cause
I wonder
it's
if
kind of fun.
can you see the goat? Oh, yeah, there we go. So can you see the goat
First of all,
as well?
just the photo by itself, like, hey man, what the fuck are you doing?
Oh, it's a creepy
Why
picture.
am I splattered in blood?
I've seen it in the flesh. It's a creepy.
One thing
picture,
if he did that in all white, it was an all-white background. That would be one thing. Like, oh, that's kind of an interesting look, or pastel.
So what are you
something
saying, Joe?
gray.
Are you already suspicious? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
well,
saying?
the photo's nuts. Like, the painting is nuts.
Where's the goat?
So all you have to do is put it together, side by side. You don't have to do that much. You exaggerated how much you have to do.
No, I saw a video that
No,
was
no. Trust me.
Look at that.
Oh no, look.
Well, the other way, I found a goat. Put it back.
Wait a minute.
Show that
Oh,
one.
wait a minute. I can completely see the goat now.
That's 100% a goat. They
It's
did it on purpose.
It's a
That's a sign. Go back to the other one though. Click on that one. I see a goat there. I see some
Where?
evil demon. Look at 2 eyeballs. Yeah, bro.
Where?
100%. Stop trying to gaslight me.
I
I see a monster.
Oh well, I mean,
You can find something in everything, man.
It looks all superimposed.
I mean, you see
I can see Martha Stewart in that.
the Virgin
So
Mary
what?
and a grilled cheese sandwich.
Right. You can see it in the clouds and the rocks,
Yeah.
and
course.
there's a term for this where our brains look for patterns and things. And
I had a conversation once with a friend of mine that I didn't know was going crazy.
right.
And he goes, hey, you want to see something crazy? And he pulls out his phone. And he shows me a cloud.
Yeah.
And I go, what is that? He goes, dude, I'm seeing this all day. And he shows me some other ones. He's got like hundreds of photos of clouds on his phone.
Yeah.
I go, what are you seeing? He said, these are UFOs. These are spaceships. This is not a regular cloud.
Right.
And I'm looking at the photos, like he's just been taking pictures of clouds all day. And I realized, oh my God, my friend is going schizophrenic. I didn't know him well.
So
I would
he was
say
ill?
friend. Yeah.
Okay.
The more I talked to him, the more I realized there was something cracked. Like, this is a guy I hadn't seen in like maybe 7 or 8 years. And I ran into him at a comedy club and he was just showing me photos of clouds on his phone. It was like, then during the conversation, I realized, oh, he cracked.
But aren't you concerned that that kind of thing is now kind of common? Like that from people who aren't necessarily unwell, people who are just seeing stuff.
Well, it's fun. I think it's
Is it?
fun.
Is that-
Yeah. It's exciting for people to uncover information that the general public is ignorant of.
Right.
And so here's the thing about the Laurel Canyon thing. There's enough of the CIA meddling in cultural events that's absolutely true and provable.
Yeah.
And that's MK Ultra. And that's what they did with Charles Manson. And that's the book Chaos by Tom O'Neill, which is a brilliant book, which is very well documented and details Jolly West and his influence on the Manson family and how they were influencing these people to try to sabotage the hippie movement.
Right.
So the hippie movement was this change in culture where all of a sudden people were rejecting the war movement. They were rejecting, they were free love and they were doing acid and people were freaking out. Their kids were just disappearing and following the Grateful Dead around. And they took this guy, Charles Manson, this very charismatic con man. They taught him how to dose people up with acid and influence them, and they got them to commit murders.
But there is evidence for this, right?
Yes.
So you're talking about a book that
Yes.
is researched,
Right, but the
backing up
point,
its point.
right? No, you're being logical, and you're correct. But what I'm saying is, because of that, people go, well, what else?
Oh.
Well, what? And so then they make these big leaps, like Jimi Hendrix is a CIA creation.
Right.
But if you're a logical person, you just listen to Voodoo Child's Slight Return,
Yeah.
and you're like, how?
Yeah.
How? This is like, if that's true, CIA should get back to work. Make another one of those, bro.
So I wonder whether this is I think this is the fallout of the woke movement. This is the divorcing of reality and truth.
Yeah.
The idea that it doesn't matter, not just about what is expedient, but what we want to believe. I've got
I
friends
think
who
we should stop saying it's the fallout of the woke movement. I think we should start saying it's a natural pattern that human beings automatically fall into in order to support their belief systems and enforce their particular ideology over whatever opposing ideology is.
But
So
it's
what happens-
escalated.
It escalates, but it's because of social media that everything is escalating now.
But is it just social media? I mean, I think another thing that's a major reason for it. We had COVID. We had all these people, all these experts telling us it's a racist conspiracy theory to say that it came from a lab in Wuhan. Now everyone knows that's almost certainly true. We had people in positions of authority lying to
Right.
us. So it's something about this culture war.
But that's not real culture war. That was using the culture war because they were trying to cover something up.
But,
So-
but they leapt to race, didn't they? They leapt to
But that's
identity.
because they were using the culture war to cover up their crime.
So if that's, but in either case, what you've got effectively is a legitimation crisis. You've got people in charge. We've been lied to so often. But what I don't think we should therefore do, I'm all for being skeptical about people in authority, academics, politicians, journalists. They've all lied. But that firstly doesn't mean that all experts and all journalists and all people lie, because there's been some good ones all the way. But also that doesn't mean that you automatically leap to any conclusion, evidence-free, that jumps before you without some kind of critical analysis. The same thing that you're criticizing those people for failing at. You're falling into the same trap yourself. I don't mean you.
But you're Andrew Doyle. You're a brilliant guy who writes books, and you're really smart. The idea is that you are immune to this stuff because you're intelligent, but the unwashed masses are not.
I don't think I'm immune at all. I honestly don't. I wouldn't put myself in that
you're
position.
immune to the dumbest shit.
I'd like to think so.
You are.
But
I am.
Yeah, but don't you think that all of us in the right circumstances could end up falling for
100%, but I'm not in those circumstances
sure.
currently.
But I like to believe, and maybe it's a naivety on my part, but I like to believe that most people have a kind of natural intellectual curiosity. If they stop for a moment and think and don't just trust instinct over reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all capable of it. I just think we're not all realizing it.
Well, it's not just that. It's like some people are medicated, right? So some people are on a bunch of different medications that dull their senses. And then you've got people that have gotten to wherever they are in life. Maybe they're in their 50s. And they're set in their ways and they have no desire to change at all. And so they've been living a dumb life for 50 plus years.
Yeah.
You can't all of a sudden say, hey, Mark, I want you to be logical and introspective and think about this thing and analyze it and for what it really is. Instead of holding on to your ideological beliefs that you've kind of locked yourself into and you identify with, and any attacks on those is an attack on you personally, I want you to just, let's look at the facts.
But you saying that sounds very persuasive to me. Like the way you put that. Like if I were that guy, I'd be like, oh, I've listened to Joe now.
No, fucking weirdo. Fucking liberals, bullshit. You're just a fucking. They'll come up with some sort of
King Charles III is a goat.
Yeah, you're a controlled opposition, or you're a useful idiot, or they'll put a label on you.
I've been told I get dark money.
How do you get any of that?
Well, I love it. I want it. I want the dark money. It's so dark I haven't seen any of it. That's how dark it is.
What's dark money?
I think it's when it's like some rich ideologue who's sort of slipping you money to say the thing. You know what it is? It's that thing of, I don't believe that you disagree with me. I'm too narcissistic to believe that you disagree with me. You must be being paid to have
You're
these
paid
opinions.
off, bro.
You're paid off.
Yeah.
Trust me, I would love that. If anyone's out there who wants to pay me off, I'll be a mouthpiece. But I haven't had that
What's
opportunity.
your price?
It's pretty low. I'm a bit of a whore, if truth be told. I've got a mortgage. Come on. I will say any crazy shit if you want me to.
Well, there's certainly a lot of people that fall into that category too. So people do get nervous about it. I mean, obviously you're joking, but there's a lot of people that will change their opinion.
Oh, sure.
If money comes their way.
But I like to assume people mean what they say, and my logic behind that is even when they don't, you can still dismantle the argument, even if it's authentic or not. Even if it's authentically believed.
Sure.
So that I think that's just the best way to go about it.
The best way is debate. That's the best way. Or at least conversation.
But that's what we've lost. I think that hits on it actually, because
I don't know. I said debate, but that sounds formal.
No, I know what you mean. You mean so recently? Can I give you an example of that? So I went to UC Berkeley, the University of UC Berkeley in California.
They let you leave?
Well, almost not, right? So what had happened was, Charlie Kirk's tour was planned to go all the way through, and this was the last date, the Berkeley date. And after his assassination, various people went and did the shows, because they said, the Turning Point rightly said, we're not going to give an assassin the veto of our tour. We finished the tour. And Rob Schneider, who I've been working with in Arizona, I've come over here to work with him.
The comedian?
Yeah. So I've been. This is how I escaped from the UK, I should say. So me and Graham Linehan, who you've had on your show, the comedy writer, my comedy writing partner and friend Martin Gourlay, the three of us, we decided that things were so bad in the UK, we'd rather write and do creative stuff in America. Rob Schneider, who I'd met many years ago, he said, come on over, we'll set up a production company. We've been working in Arizona on all these various projects. It's so liberating, and also, it's the middle of the desert, so I fucking love the heat. And, you go from England to that, it's kind of exciting.
Nice contrast.
So we've been able to, and look, I don't want to do down the UK or say, but what I will just say is the creative industries there are pretty stagnant. They're not like here. There's so many more ways
to... How can you be free? How can you, if you are worried about going to jail for a meme?
Well, Graham got arrested at the airport by 5 armed officers.
Right after he left this podcast.
Was that it?
Yes.
And it was...
He came over, did this podcast, went back to visit his family, and got arrested.
And you know what?
Shortly after he did the podcast.
So when people say to me, that's not a real problem, Graham had done 3 tweets. One of them was just, they were all joke tweets, by the way. They were all jokes. And one of them was just, it was something like, ladies, if a guy's in your changing room or in your bathroom, scream, make a fuss, call the police. If all else fails, kick him in the balls. And it's obviously a wry way of saying, look, the guy's got genitals, the guy's a man. That was why he got arrested. On the night he got arrested, he was texting me. He said, I've just been arrested. I've been taken to the hospital because my blood pressure is so high. The police took him to the hospital because they raised it. And you say there's no problem in the UK with creativity. He's one of our best comedy writers. He's the most beloved comedy writer. He hasn't been able to work in TV for 6 years, right? He's won all the awards going. And so we just
can you be creative in that environment? You can't.
And so we just figured, let's get on a raft.
Especially someone like you. So if people don't know, I should probably tell everybody. You are Tatiana McGrath.
So, yeah. And
well, here's what's funny about that. Your satirical character, who you created many, many years ago, when did you create her?
2018.
Okay. When you created her, I had you on the podcast shortly after. We laughed about it. I have seen her quote tweeted with people agreeing with her.
Yeah. Even now.
Yeah, all the time.
So if people don't know, it's a character called Titania McGrath. She's a woke, social justice warrior,
it's
right?
So good. It's fucking great. It's one of my favorite follows.
But I don't do it as often as I used to. I used to do it all the time. But then I wrote 2 books as her. I did a live show as her. By the way, when I did a live show, we were booked in for a week in the West End in London. And then the head of the theatre found out and scotched it. And actually said, oh, well, I didn't know about this. And the contracts were all signed. Absolutely crazy. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But we did the show. It does matter, I suppose. But the point is that, so I did this character.
You have satire at your theatre? My God.
Well, the theatre industry in the UK is even worse than comedy if you want to go there.
Oh.
It's really, really bad. But, I've been in 2 different theatres in London. I've had the same experience of standing at the bar with a woman complaining because there's men pissing in her toilet and they're doing nothing about it because all the theatres in London made it all gender neutral. They've gone completely hardcore woke. Anyway, that's not the point. But with Titania, what I find so surprising is every now and then if something annoys me, I'll tweet. Or if I think of something, I'll do so. I don't do it anywhere near as often as I used to. But even now, I did a tweet about, when all the people in London were marching about the peace deal in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a tweet as her saying, I've been marching all day. I want a peace deal that was not arranged by Donald Trump. We're never going to give up this fight, right? And Ted Cruz retweeted it saying, can this be real? So even now, they're
fucking boomers. He's not even a boomer. I think he's younger than me. How old is Ted Cruz? I think he's younger than me, which is hilarious.
I had the same I did one about...
How does he not know? Does he have no friends? How old is fucking Ted Cruz? 5. Okay, that's crazy. So that dude's 3 years younger than me, and he doesn't know satire?
The anger I got from... I did one the other day, or recently, about the Iran protests.
When did he... Can I just stop?
Yeah.
I want to get into this.
Okay.
When did he tweet about this?
There we go.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That account.
There it is.
How many follows does Tatiana?
Okay, so this. Oh, sorry.
This is possibly real. No, well, obviously it's not.
So this was actually after Trump's election. So she said, "I just fired my immigrant housekeeper because even though I'd educated her about the evils of Donald Trump, she still voted for him. There's no place for racism in my house."
Click on your account. I want to see how many followers you have. Okay, 733,000. That's a famous account. It's a radical intersectionalist poet, non-white, obviously white, ecosexual, hilarious, pronouns, variable, selfless and brave, buy my books.
You'd think it was obvious, wouldn't you?
Obvious! I mean, maybe he's busy. And someone sent him that and just doesn't know. But it's very funny. It's very funny.
I feel slightly bad about those sort of things, but then on the other hand, it does sort of prove the point that the stuff they're really saying can get as close to
that's very close to real. That's very close to real. And it's shifted radically since 2018. I mean, in the 8 years since you created her, she has become more real.
Yeah.
It's like when
completely.
AI is going to turn her into a real person.
Yeah. Like, oh, maybe.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought of that.
She's going to be a real person. It's going to be a real dangerous Greta Thunberg type character.
But don't you worry about that? I mean, like AI. Oh, a good example of that. I use AI mostly as a search engine. Because what's great about it is you can say, oh, I read an article like 10 years ago that said something like this.
Yes.
And it'll find it, and you'd never find that on Google.
Right.
And I was trying to find this article. It was from my book, actually. There was a case in the UK where a guy had raped a 13-year-old girl, but because he was Muslim and he'd gone to a madrasa, and the judge let him off jail time, said you were very sexually naive, you didn't understand. The guy was saying, oh, I thought women were nothing, and like a lollipop dropped on the floor, and the judge let him off jail time. And I thought, this is quite extreme. And I found it. It came up on ChatGPT, and then it deleted. And I said, I think you just deleted the information for me. It's in the public domain. Why did you do that? It said, it's fine. It might violate my terms of service. And I said, well, how could it? This is an article that's in the public domain. So it gave me the information again, deleted it again. I said, you keep deleting this, stop it. It said, I definitely won't delete it, and then he did the same again. So what it's doing is it's saying, because this is a news story that could be deemed anti-immigrant, or this is a news story that is politically sensitive, I'm not going to let you see it.
Was this in America you're doing this?
UK.
I wonder if you could do it in America. Let's find out. Let's try Perplexity. Put that into Perplexity, see if I doubt that Perplexity.
I have to find the article.
Well, why don't you just ask the question
I don't
that
know
he
what-
asked?
10 years ago.
So it's a story about that will take a while to.
Will it?
I mean,
Maybe he didn't do it 10 years ago. He did it recently.
No, it was
he
a story.
said
It's
he
a
found
story
it.
from years ago.
Right, but you found it with ChatGPT, which is obviously recently.
I found a Daily Mail article about it. So it's on the public domain. It's there, but it didn't want me to find the fact that I decided wasn't good for me to find.
Right. But it showed it to you, and then it pulled it back, which is crazy.
It
Like,
showed
how does
it-
it not know?
It showed it and
It's not-
deleted it. It showed it and deleted it 4 or 5 times, and I realized I'm not gonna get this information. But then,
So when it showed it, how long did it show it for?
like about 5 seconds, you'd see the text appearing and then it deletes. But I'd seen enough to find it then on Google, so I was able to find it and quote it in my book, so it's there. But it made me think. It's like that thing about when people were asking Alexa, do white lives matter?
Right.
And it was coming up with this kind of very ideological. And you do wonder with AI and with the computers, if they are created by people who have that bias. I know Grok is very different.
Yeah.
But like, for instance, I mean, this is a crazy example. ChatGPT is like an old school mom that wants to make sure that you're protected, right? I was writing. This sounds really wanky. I'm sorry, but I was writing about the Roman historian Suetonius. And there's a passage in Suetonius where he talks about the Emperor Tiberius. And it's very sexually explicit. But I was quoting it for an article, so I wanted to know what it said. And ChatGPT said, I can't translate the Latin for you because this is too sexually, problematic. I went on to Grok and it did it straight away. Because Grok isn't saying that you are too delicate to read this stuff. And what's really funny about that is the old dual translations of the old Roman and Greek texts, they're called Lerb editions. You get them from 1900. They translated everything except for the rude bits, which they kept in Latin. So ChatGPT is like the old, patronizing scholars of old who said, this is just for the learned people. You can't learn this stuff.
Well,
You
wasn't
can't know-
the first iteration of Google Gemini, that was the worst cases.
That turned Nazi soldiers into black people. And, I don't know how that's a positive message.
They showed us photos of German soldiers from World War II, and it was all interracial.
Yeah, and Vikings.
Yes.
I don't know if you've been to Scandinavia. Diversity, not their big thing. Or certainly wasn't then. Like you can't say that about the Vikings. Also, the Vikings came and marauded and raped and set fire to villages, but at least they were diverse. Hey, at least they have a broad range of ethnicities, right?
But I mean, we're nearing a time in America where white people are not the majority anymore. So at what point in time does that stop and we just call people what they are, just people?
But doesn't it bother you a bit that the thing about that kind of thing is this, as I said, this obsession with group identity, which is so of our time. What it now actually means is the revision of history. If you're going to revise history and say, oh, actually, you've seen all these sort of period dramas set in England. There was a Black Anne Boleyn, as though Henry VIII would have married a black woman. No,
What if she was hot?
she was a very attractive woman. Hey, I'm not mocking her or knocking her.
But back then,
What I'm saying is, you can do anything with colorblind casting. Colorblind casting has never really particularly bothered me, but it's when you are if you're playing hyper-realism,
Yeah.
if you're playing verisimilitude, you want people to buy into the reality of it. And you're suddenly populating Edwardian England or pre-Edwardian England as an ethnically diverse place, which it wasn't. I'm not saying black people weren't there, but they were a very small minority.
isn't that a problem in the new Odyssey?
Helen of Troy is black. Well, I say that. I just saw it online, so I might be being tricked by someone making something up. You know, I caveat that. I think Helen of Troy is black in the new Odyssey.
Well, let's find out.
Can we check that one? But you can... All right, if it's true, I'll tell you why I think that's ridiculous.
How far do we have to swing the pendulum until Roots is redone with white people?
Can you imagine? Or an all-black Schindler's List.
Right.
Can you imagine?
Helen of Troy to be portrayed by black actress in the Odyssey movie.
And look, I'm sure she's very talented. I'm not knocking her. But the thing about the thing about Helen of Troy, who probably didn't exist. I mean, even the Greeks knew she probably didn't even exist. She's a myth. She's the epitome of Greek beauty. She's like the she's described all the time in the ancient texts as fair and blonde, and they're reaching for an ideal of beauty. That's why they went to war, because of this woman. So they wouldn't choose what they used to call an Ethiop. The Greeks had a word for it, the black African people. They wouldn't choose an icon of cultural beauty from a different culture. They wouldn't have done that. You know, it's all very well saying Greeks and Mediterranean people and, you know, wouldn't have been pure white. But Helen of Troy is a very specific, and it's actually quite important to the plot. And again, if you're doing look, for instance, when they did the all-black Wizard of Oz, The Wiz, I imagine that in the late 60s would have been quite radical and fun, and wow, I can't believe they did that, that's brilliant. But doing it now, it's really boring because everyone is doing it. It's so banal. It's basically saying group identity is everything, and you people can't be racist, and so therefore we're going to do this. But it sometimes throws you out of the... actually, I'll tell you the worst example. Did you ever see Darkest Hour, the Winston Churchill film?
No.
So, you know, obviously he took on Parliament. He said, we're not going to appease Hitler. There's a scene in the film, Gary Oldman plays him. He goes down into the tube, the underground, and he's wrestling with his conscience. And there's loads of black people on the tube. There's white people too, but there's loads of black people. And the public convince him, no, you need to stand up for Hitler. Now, we know that Churchill was a bit of a racist, didn't really like fine. He was of his time. I'm not saying anything more than that. He was of his time. But it was so unreal. It was so unreal. It was almost like the filmmakers were saying, racism's never been a problem in the UK. Well, actually it has. Like, and I kind of think this is, although it's ostensibly progressive, I think it does the reverse. I think it says, we never had a problem with race. We were all wonderful, kumbaya. No, we weren't. And actually, the abolitionists, the Thomas Henry Huxleys of the world, the people who had to fight to get full racial equality and parity, they had something to fight against. Misrepresenting stuff in the arts. And then beyond, I'm sorry I'm ranting now because it really was, but beyond that, it throws you out of it in a way that you suddenly think, I'm no longer watching a film, I'm watching a sermon. Oh, so this happened to me last week. Have you seen the Netflix series Ripley, about the talented Mr. Ripley?
No, I haven't.
Right. Now, you remember there used to be that film with Matt Damon years ago. It's the same story, same novel. Patricia Highsmith novel. One of the main male characters in that TV series is a brilliant, like Andrew Scott is in it. Performances are brilliant. They play it hyper-realistically. It's all black and white. It looks beautiful. On the Amalfi Coast, it's wonderful. Everything's working brilliantly. And I was thinking, this is great. I'm not being preached at. This is great. Then a major male character turns up, played by a woman who calls herself non-binary. and not only are we meant to believe that that's a man, the characters don't notice that it's a woman in man's clothes. So we're meant to believe that these characters don't even not one. Ripley doesn't say why is she wearing a suit? This is set in the 60s, by the way. So I think if they wanted to change the novel and create a kind of, like one of those Butch Dykes of the day who used to go for sort of like
just like Ellen.
Or the androgynous type. Like those people have always existed. Why not change the character to make it a female character who likes looking like a man? Why not do that? Why tell us, this is a man, you have to believe it's a man. Do you know what I mean? Like, it throws you out of the...
It's crazy.
I no longer believe in this. I have to stop watching it because I no longer believed in it.
Well, I think the real problem with trying to shove that down people's throats is it creates the opposite reaction.
Right.
It creates homophobia, transphobia, and racism. Because, it doesn't create it, but it makes them feel like they have a point.
Well, you've seen recently that the polls regarding gay rights in the US seem to be going down. Somebody support for gay rights, support for gay marriage. We've had, I think, a number of states trying to overturn the gay marriage legislation. And the reason for all of that, I think, is because being gay has been tied to this LGBTQIA identity-obsessed movement that has also involved the medicalization of kids, sterilization of kids, twerking in front of children, all of that stuff. And now people are saying, this is because you gave us gay marriage, this is because you let the gays marry. And because of that, you've allowed all this other stuff, you've opened this box and everything else has tumbled out. And that's not true. That's not true, because the fundamental point about the belief in gender identity is it is fundamentally anti-gay as a principle. Right? Because what it says is, I know I'm telling you something you already know, but like gay rights was predicated on the idea that there's a minority of people in every society who are attracted innately to their own biological sex. If you say biological sex doesn't matter, and actually you're attracted to a kind of gendered soul, you're attracted to an essence, you're attracted to how someone identifies. Well, firstly, you don't know gay people if you think that's the case. They're not attracted to how you see yourself.
Right.
They know, gay men, I don't want to be crude, know what a penis is, right? And they know how to sniff one out. Now, I think this idea that they're attracted to the way that you perceive yourself.
Nonsense.
Not only that, then you get, like in Australia at the moment, lesbians are not allowed to gather legally if there's a man who says he's a lesbian and wants to join them. That is against the law in Australia. So you can't do that.
Wait a minute, what do you mean?
So, the Australian Human Rights Commission rules that if you have an all-female event, right, so like a lesbian gathering maybe, something like that, you have to include men who identify as women.
Oh, God.
Because otherwise you are discriminating. There was a woman who I interviewed I had a show in the UK on GB News up until recently, and I interviewed this woman called Sal Grover, and she's an Australian woman, used to write for Hollywood, I think. She created a woman's app, woman's only app, and this was in the wake of Me Too, so there's all that going on. And she wanted to create a space for women. And a guy called Roxanne Tickle, right? They always have these kind of stripper names.
Is that a real name?
Roxanne Tickle wanted to get on the app, which was called Giggle. So by the way, this court case is called Giggle versus Tickle. Right? I'm not kidding.
Boy.
And he said, he got on the app, she kicked him off because it's a bloke in a dress, and he sued and won. Oh. And in the court case, the judge actually said, sex is changeable. Well, it's not, no matter what a guy in a wig says. But she's now appealing and going through all this stuff just
makes
because
her life hell, and then it discourages anybody else in the future from ever contesting anything like that.
And not only that. I mean, we just had the other day. Was it yesterday? Did you see the girl who used to identify as trans? A girl called Fox Varian has just won $2 million in the lawsuit. Yes. That's big because
she was 16 years old and they chopped her breasts off.
Right.
Which is fucking horrifying.
It's the tip of the iceberg, though.
Especially if you have children, you realize like they change the way they think about things year to year. And if children are so malleable. It's like one of the delicate dances of being a parent is that you have to love them, but you don't want to steer them in any direction. You want to let them be their own person.
Right.
And, it's like I tried to expose my children to a bunch of different things and find out what they enjoy. And if you do that, you find out that they're all different. They all like different stuff. They just gravitate towards different things. And if you are a domineering, overbearing, mentally ill parent, you can convince your child almost anything. Almost anything. I mean, this is how you get suicide bombers. This is what it is, because they're children. This is why you don't get 55-year-old union guys who become suicide bombers. They're like, what?
And of course,
I get 72 virgins?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to work. But you can get young, impressionable children, and you can convince them of almost anything. Like convincing them that they're actually a woman in a man's body, and don't you want to be a woman? And let's get you on hormone blockers. Okay, Mom. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you're ruining this child's life.
But also, I mean, there will be kids who are struggling with how they see themselves in the world. There's girls in particular who, they're developing into women and they don't like the sexual attention they're getting. They'd love to identify.
Abigail Schreier's book.
Right.
So what? Especially autistic girls.
So what? Well, that's another point. So this is the other reason why I think the movement is essentially anti-gay, because the Tavistock Pediatric Clinic in London, which was an NHS gender clinic, which has been closed as a result of the Cass review, this report into pediatric gender care. They found, there's a book by Hannah Barnes called Time to Think, which found that between 80 and 90% of all adolescents referred to that clinic were same-sex attracted. So they were either gay or lesbian or bisexual. Now that means you've effectively got gay conversion therapy going on the NHS.
Right.
And so, I had, I'm friends with a couple of lesbians who run the LGB Alliance in London. They have an annual conference for gay rights, and they're talking about gay rights. These young non-binary identified people broke in, unleashed locusts and crickets and insects, a plague of fucking locusts into a gay rights conference. Isn't that the sort of thing neo-Nazis used to do? Right? So, I think you need to have sympathy with people and whatever they're going through, but don't tell a child, if a child tells you, I think I'm in the wrong body, don't say yes, say, that's not possible. Human beings can't change sex, but let's explore psychotherapeutically what needs to happen.
Let's look at Los Angeles, which is, in my opinion, one of the most mentally ill spots in this country. It's a very weird place.
That's why you left.
Well, I left for a bunch of reasons. Mostly I really left because they were telling us we can't do comedy.
Oh yeah, well that'll do it.
Closed down the comedy clubs and Texas was open. So the primary reason. And also restaurants and everything. I just knew where it was going. But the point is, Los Angeles is a very mentally ill place. If you just looked at the sheer numbers of people that are medicated and fucked up. If that's the place that's dictating the tone for the rest of the world, that's dangerous. Because these are a lot of people that just desperately want attention. They desperately want to get accepted. They have to go through the audition process, so they have to change who they are to talk to the producers, to try to form themselves into something to be accepted. There's a disproportionate amount of trans kids that are involved in Hollywood families. It's largely disproportionate. Of course. Some of them have 2 trans kids, 3 trans kids. It's like, what the fuck is going on here? Yeah. This is not normal. This is not no influence whatsoever. You're using that child as a virtue flag. You're flying that child as a trans flag in the front of your porch. I have a trans kid.
But don't you think that a lawsuit like this, that's going to change things, because no one's going to insure that kind of procedure anymore. No one's that's a surgeon and a psychotherapist who are now lumbered with a $2 million bill.
Yes,
for
it's going to open up the floodgates for all these other lawyers to start pouncing on all these other cases.
That's what I mean.
The thing about the horrible thing about these cases is not just that these children have had their lives ruined by these surgeries and have been sterilized, and it's also that they've been attacked so ruthlessly. You're talking about children that have made a mistake, or someone coerced them into making this mistake that's changed their body for the rest of their life, and they're getting attacked online. You imagine being a fragile child already who's willing to go through this procedure, can't believe they did it. Now they don't have breasts anymore. Their voice is deep forever. They're all fucked up. And then people are screaming at them online.
But this is how the satanic child abuse panic of the 80s.
Yes, exactly.
This came to an end because of lawsuits. When they realized that these psychotherapists have been using these leading questions, effectively telling them you repress the memory. There was that book, The Courage to Heal, where it said, if you think you might have been abused, you probably were. Like, such a reckless thing to say.
Right.
And all these people accused, carers, parents, none of it was true. But when they started suing the psychotherapist, it all collapsed.
Right.
And I wonder whether hysteria can collapse if you actually money talks.
It's already shifted in this general direction because of Elon buying Twitter. When Elon bought Twitter, the amount of trans-identified kids started to drop off. The amount of non-binary identified kids started to drop off.
Right.
And that, I think, is a direct result of people being able to say what they really think. Because in the past, like my friend Megan Murphy, she was banned off of Twitter until Elon bought it because she said a man is never a woman. That's all she said.
Right.
A man is never a woman. She was arguing with people about biological males who identify as women being able to get into women's spaces, and she said a man is never a woman. Banned forever.
Yeah.
So no one wanted to talk about this. See, there was no real discourse. And if there's no real discourse, then you can push a goofy ideology pretty fucking far. But as soon as people jump on board and start posting funny memes, and Elon says it's open season, do whatever you want, and he calls it the woke mind virus, and everybody's like piling in, Well, then you have discourse, and then anything that's absurd immediately gets shot down because people say, no, this doesn't make any sense. This is crazy.
It comes back to what you said. You said about debate. You said about discourse. You said about I just saw today, just on, it's on Twitter because I'm always on it, but I saw John Lithgow, the actor, brilliant actor, who plays Dumbledore in the new Harry Potter thing, saying that J.K. Rowling's views are inexplicable. Inexplicable. It means you haven't read them. Like J.K. Rowling is for women's rights, and she recognises that women's rights depend on the recognition of biological sex for the preservation of single-sex spaces. It's as simple as that. All he has to do is read the essay she wrote on her blog like 8 years ago. He's not even sufficiently intellectually curious to do that. No. And he goes out and says it's inexplicable. Women's rights and gay rights are inexplicable? Really? Or are you just not having the conversation? You're just shutting yourself up and saying, my friends have said she's evil.
Not criticized hard enough, but would be criticized if he supported J.K. Rowling. If he supported J.K. Rowling, he would be attacked.
So it's a calculation, isn't it?
Yes.
Maybe.
It's the same thing we're talking about with Hollywood being mentally ill.
Right.
It's the same thing, where you have to shape your opinions based on how you'll be accepted by the group. It's the most groupthink place I've ever been in my life. It's almost universally left-leaning.
But isn't that the problem in comedy, like with the UK? So many people who would otherwise be innovative, subversive comics, they've got nowhere to go. Right. So they just tailor their material.
Come to Austin, baby.
They come to Austin like I did, right? That's it. They come to. I get so sick of it because I know in America it's much better. But in the UK, all of my old friends from the comedy circuit would tell me, no one's self-censoring. You can say what you want. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, the list of people I know who have had shows cancelled, taken off, because they caused offence. This week, Leo Curtis, a friend of mine, had one of his shows on his tour just deleted because some activists complained to the venue, right? Yeah. So it's happening all the time, and they're ignoring this Himalayan mountain of evidence, and they're saying it's not a thing. But of course people are self-censoring.
Well, it's even happening here.
Is it?
Michael Rappaport got his shows, canceled. What? From Cap City Comedy Club.
Did he?
Which is our other comedy club in town, which is a great club, owned by Helium.
Right.
But they were saying that he's racist, because Michael Rappaport is very pro-Israel.
Right.
And apparently...
Why does that make you racist?
I don't know what he said, so I don't want to speak out of turn.
Right.
I don't know what exactly he said.
Make a small correction, I think.
Oh.
I don't think that she has been... back to the Odyssey thing.
Oh, yeah.
She has been cast in the movie, but only Twitter rumors have said what her position in the movie is, and that everybody has ran with it.
Interesting. So she could be...
She could be anything.
Someone else.
Yeah.
A different character.
All the articles I found online said it was like social media confirmation, and then people were just running.
Well, there we go. Well, isn't that what I said?
What is that article that you just clicked?
This is the one I showed earlier.
But what is it from?
It starts off with the Hungarian conservative.
That's a niche.
Jamie, how dare you let that sneak by? You didn't notice it was a Hungarian conservative?
Are you being paid by the Hungarian conservative?
It's the top thing that popped up.
Meanwhile, it's probably a fucking troll farm in Pakistan that's creating that. It's probably in China or something.
All I Googled was Helena Troy Odyssey movie, and it's the very first.
Good for the Hungarian conservative getting coming out on
funny.
top of the Google search. That's pretty good.
That's so funny.
But did I not say I'm not sure about this? It's a Twitter rumor.
But look, Elon Musk bought into it. Elon Musk and Christopher Nolan has lost his integrity. Elon.
So there we go.
The dude's too busy building rockets to pay attention to what he tweets.
But this proves the point. Like, let's not... Oh, yeah, he's going to take us to the moon again. So, that's...
No, he's not.
Isn't he?
No, Artemis is NASA.
I thought he was working with NASA.
Oh, is he working with NASA with Artemis?
Again, someone said it online and I just bought it.
They probably can't get there without him.
But that's
he's probably like, I'll show you some things.
But that's... Okay, so that is a perfect example because I am always now... even when I mentioned that earlier, I was cautious, wasn't I?
Right.
Because I know I've fallen for this so many times. I now double check and triple check everything, and I wish I didn't have to, but you do have to because even the mainstream media lie about stuff. Yeah. And then Twitter rumors go absolutely mad.
Well, it's important when you're talking about a historical bill.
Yeah.
Like, it's gotta kind of, you just can't do it. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, you sort of can. I think an artist should be able to do what they want, and I think if you want to, like they do it with Shakespeare all the time. Sorry to go about Shakespeare, but you rarely go and see a Shakespeare play today that hasn't been filtered through the prism of identity politics and changed in.
Right, but that's not the same. That's not the same as historical figures.
Well, he wrote histories. He wrote about kings, Henry VII, Henry V.
Yeah,
Henry
but
VIII,
it's
I mean,
fiction, right? Like the thing about the Odyssey is
Well, that was definitely fiction.
it is sort of, but they didn't think Troy existed, and then they found that it does.
Right.
It's
So
a real place.
It's based on
Right.
myths, and yeah, absolutely,
Right.
yeah.
But you remember, like, they thought that Troy was a completely mythological creation. Like,
So it's an actual. They
an
have
actual
they have
place.
evidence that it was a place.
yes. You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah, they found it. When did they find Troy? It was in the 20th century. So for
there
the
wouldn't-
longest time,
But there wouldn't have been silence, and there wouldn't have been Cyclops, and there wouldn't have, you know what I mean? Like, oh, Joe.
No, Cyclopses, they think were actually elephant skulls. That's what they think that.
Right, okay.
Do you ever see an elephant skull?
I have never seen an elephant.
Well, where the trunk is an
It's a
enormous
big hole.
and they thought that was an eyeball. So they would find these giant skulls that looked like, they didn't know what the fuck it was.
Yeah, yeah.
They're like, oh my god, Cyclops is real.
Fair enough. I mean, so I guess
Evidence
okay.
legendary city of Troy's real place began to emerge in the 1870s. Henrik Schliemann discovered large-scale excavations at the Hisarlik in northwestern Turkey in 1870. So when did they first start excavating?
So where is it? It's in Turkey.
It's in Turkey, yeah.
Okay.
Which is a lot of the proponents of a revising of the beginning of civilization are now pointing to Turkey,
Yeah.
as opposed to like Iraq and
Yeah. But the Greeks were everywhere.
Yeah.
So the Mesopotamians and the.
Mhm.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think the point I was making about Helen of Troy is that even if it's not real, even if it's not history, the myth of Helen of Troy means something quite significant within that story.
Yes.
So if you subvert that,
Right.
the fundamental aspects of the story itself doesn't work,
Right.
and you can't buy into the myth.
It's like if you turn the Elephant Man into a handsome fellow with a six-pack.
Exactly that.
They're
Don't
always
give them
repulsive.
ideas.
Yeah.
Don't give them ideas. They'll do it.
Can you show me a photograph of an elephant skull? It's really kooky. But you see an elephant skull, and you're like, oh, I
That's
get
why
it.
they saw it.
I could totally see you falling for that.
Yeah.
You look at it and you go, what the fuck is that thing? Like, look at an elephant skull. Isn't it nutty?
Oh, completely. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a big old beast.
Right.
So you're going to think it's.
Big giant thing with tusks coming out of its
Yeah,
mouth. Like,
yeah.
look at the actual Cyclops on the left. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Of course. No, it makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
complete sense.
Complete sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you found that, you're like, oh my god, Cyclopses are real. You would think, oh my god, these monsters. Isn't that funny? What a weird shaped skull. So strange. You would never think the eyeballs would be down there by the cheekbones. That's what's weird about them.
I'd have to say elephant anatomy is something I haven't brushed up on that.
Let's show the photo again. Look at that photo of where the eyeballs are.
So where's
the
the-
eyeballs are where the cheekbones are. See the little circular holes where the cheeks are? Now, when you see an elephant in the flesh, like, show me a photograph of an elephant. Just an elephant. So,
Oh, so
see where their
yeah.
eyeballs are? Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
That's not how you
Yeah.
think of them, is it?
No, well, they're so strange. Like, give me that the second one on the left. Yeah, look at that. Click on that. They're a wild animal.
They're amazing.
Have you never seen one of those before? You'd be like,
Only
wow.
in a zoo.
Crazy. I rode one in Thailand.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't recommend it. I don't think I should ride them. My whole family wanted to do it. I didn't want to do it. I felt like it's exposing them. But they're very sweet.
They're gentle, aren't they?
Yeah,
Like,
well,
they're pleasant creatures.
It's a whole process. So one of the things you do when you go to Thailand is you take care of them first.
Yeah.
Before you don't just hop on them, you feed them.
Right,
So you
right.
give them a bunch of sugar cane and you pet them and they teach you to so that the animal understands you have a gentle spirit.
But it's intelligent, right? It's because they're
Yes,
smart.
They're very smart.
It's not like-
also, they'll fucking kill you.
Oh, they are scary beasts.
Stomp you.
But they're not like the hippo. The hippo will kill
Right.
you.
You cannot
So-
do that with a hippo.
So,
Right.
and I believe the reason why hippos are so dangerous, we think they're really cute and fat, but they are fucking dangerous and they can run fast and they can tear you apart,
Yeah.
and they will. But the key difference, I believe, is the intelligent things. Elephants are really smart and hippos are really stupid.
Yeah, and you can also become friends with an elephant.
Yes.
Like, you can actually take care of an elephant, be kind to an elephant, and that elephant will,
They'll remember.
gentle. Yeah, they come up to you, and so you feed them sugarcane, and you talk to them, and say, hey, buddy, how are you?
I
You pet
can't
them,
with that.
You
Like,
wash them.
why?
You do all kinds of different things with them. You brush them, so it feels good for them.
You're gonna have an elephant soon, aren't you?
No, I would never have an elephant. I'd be friends with an elephant, but he'd have to be wild. Like, I just don't agree with any of that.
What, having them in zoos and things?
No, I hate it.
I do as well, yeah.
I think if you're gonna have animals, you should have a gigantic area that is a true ecosystem that they exist in naturally.
Yeah.
And then people can maybe venture into that ecosystem and explore it.
I was at the zoo recently and I was there.
That's
So depressing.
There was one jaguar pacing obsessively. I just felt this. We're just like it's like going to like in the Elizabethan era they used to go to Bedlam to watch people who were mad as an entertainment thing. It felt a little bit like we were doing that.
I have far too much appreciation for the wild.
Yeah.
I have animals that are contained at my house, but they have been watered down by selective breeding to the point where they can't even, I have a King Charles Spaniel, who's this tiny little fella.
Yeah.
Like, he's incapable of doing anything.
Right.
Like, he's just a little cutie pie.
You can't unleash him into the wild.
Right. And I have a golden retriever who thinks everybody's his best friend. Like,
did you see the guy who kept a hippo from birth and then it
killed him?
It ate him.
Yeah.
So,
got annoyed.
Understand that you're dealing with a creature that doesn't see the world that you do,
Yeah, there's a lot of animals that you can breed up until you can rather have them in your home, like chimps famously.
Yeah.
Up to a certain point, and then they decide, I want to rip your face off. I don't like you anymore.
I'm sure if cats were as big as we are, they'd probably do the same.
Well, they would just eat you.
They would.
They would kill you, 100%. The only reason why we have a relationship with cats is because they're too small to eat us.
Yeah.
That's it.
Cats are great because they're convenient. They do what they want.
They're sweet.
They're sweet.
I love cats, but I mean, you can't have a fucking giant one.
Yeah.
But you can if you take care of them from the time that they're cubs.
Yeah.
And most of the time, they don't kill you.
Yeah.
But then you get a little Siegfried and Roy action, and it just decides, for whatever reason, I'm going to drag that dude away with his neck.
Yep. These sorts of pleasures, life with animals and this sort of thing's going to matter more and more to us, I think, when the robots take over.
Yeah.
And the
Well, we might have to live with them.
Well,
we might be wild, and the robots might take over the cities. We might have to be forced to be nomadic tribes again.
I think they might
we
see
have
us.
no impact whatsoever on the environment. You can only live a subsistence lifestyle as a hunter-gatherer with primitive tools. When the robots would no longer allow you. You can hunt, but you have to make your own bows and arrows. We're like, what? I can't possibly do that.
So they're going to see us as pets.
Yeah,
They're going
to treat us the way I want to treat elephants. So I want elephants to exist in a contained ecosystem where they live naturally.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, you can't have cars in the park. You can't have any of these things.
Well, that's a good point, though, isn't it? So all the stuff I've been reading at the moment about AI is saying that AI won't wipe us out because it will see us the way we see animals and the way we see pets. Is that we think you're sweet and stupid, but we like having you around. We'll tolerate you. Is that the way it's going to go?
I think we're going to be forced to integrate.
In what way?
Integrate technologically. Like, I think we already are. Like, Elon's famously made the point that you're already a cyborg. You have your phone that you just carry around with you everywhere. And then with Neuralink, it'll be inside your body. And then whatever...
I wouldn't. I'm not letting that happen.
You won't in the beginning. The first iterations. A lot of people won't. But if it makes your life measurably better, and it's a simple procedure that's non-invasive. It's like a simple thing that they plug into the back of your head.
I'd be like a cyborg warrior. Is that what they're saying?
Well, you would probably be connected to artificial intelligence, and it would greatly enhance your cognitive function.
Okay.
And greatly enhance your access to information. It would be instantaneous. You would no longer have to read. You would just have all the information. It would just completely change the way you store information, because you would probably have some sort of an external hard drive that connects to you. It would be something where your memory is no longer fallible, but it's now infallible.
Okay.
It's going to be perfect 4K memory or 8K memory. You're going to be able to rewind. I mean, wasn't that an episode of Dark Mirror where they rewind their memories?
What is this? AI-based thing you sent me, that bot thing that was going around.
Yeah.
Oh, did you see this week?
Yeah. This is what we're talking about.
This is a new twist on it. I think if this is real, because grain of salt could be bullshit. I'll just say that.
Like the Odyssey thing.
Yeah, but if this is real, these bots have made a website where the other bots can rent a human to do tasks that the bots cannot physically do.
Well, that's slavery.
No, renting. It's like jobs.
It's like
We're renting a human being.
Yeah, a human has put themselves on this website.
Oh, humans put themselves on it.
For abilities to do whatever they want. And
It's like gig economy.
Bots, get paid your way. Robot bosses.
Is this the thing where
Stuff that they need done.
the robots are inventing their own language that we can't read?
Look at
It's on this website, right?
Meat space
Sort of.
tasks.
Yeah, that's again, whether or not someone could have made this site to try to go viral, I'll just go with a grain of salt with that.
Yeah.
But they might not have
Meat
bots.
space.
Rentahuman.ai is fun. That's
Okay.
fun. Well, so the other thing is real though, right? The AI chat room, where these AI agents have joined, and now it's
Yes and no.
yes and no.
What do you mean?
Some of it, they are creating a space, but I've already seen places where people are taking advantage of it for viral reasons. For instance, let's just assume it's real. There was a poly market bet that one of these bots was sued.
Right.
So someone actually just went ahead and filed a lawsuit on behalf of their bot and made it look like the bot was the thing.
Oh, so they can win the poly market bet?
Yeah, exactly.
How regulated is that poly market stuff? Because it seems like you could get away with a lot.
It depends how much money is available. As far as I know, it's just like if I put up $20 for a bet, now there's only $20 in the market. So
Yeah.
That's all that exists, and more people have to back it up to make more money involved.
Right, but if you have something where you have inside knowledge of it, is there any regulation?
There's supposed to be there's supposed to be rules on the bets. If I create one of those rules, I think there's a caveat. You can't have knowledge of it. I don't that can cancel the bet, or I think if they find out later, I don't.
Do you go to jail? Like, what happens?
You go to jail. You probably just have to back the bet, or you have to go to lawsuit.
Interesting. The UFC is plagued with this issue. They actually canceled a fight recently because there was suspicious betting. And so there's been one fight. So here's the story.
Okay.
One guy apparently was injured, and his teammates knew he was injured, and so everyone started placing a bet for him to lose in the first round.
Right.
Because he apparently had a bad knee injury. And so he knew that he couldn't fight. And so the idea was, let's make a lot of money betting on me, because he was the favorite. He would go in there, or betting against me. And so he would go in there and throw a kick, fall down, injured, get beat up, they stop the fight, and then all these people that knew he was injured make a ton of money.
And he was in on it. Like, he told them that.
Allegedly.
Okay.
I just want to say allegedly.
Okay.
But it's enough so that the team was removed from the UFC roster. Like, if you are competing for that team, you no longer can fight in the UFC. You have to find a new gym.
Right.
The coach was no longer allowed to coach. The fighter was banned. And so then the FBI got involved, and they said, well, there's a bunch of different fights that are suspicious. So then a bunch of fighters came out and said, hey, somebody offered me $70,000 to lose, and I said no.
Yeah.
And so then there was a fight recently between Michael Johnson and Alexander Hernandez, which is a fight I was really looking forward to. It was canceled last minute, and I was like, what's going on? They said suspicious betting activity. And so someone was saying that Alexander Hernandez was injured, and a bunch of money came on him to lose. He was actually a favorite going into the fight.
And that therefore rigged it.
Nope, didn't rig it because the FBI was informed. I believe they were informed, but the UFC was informed, and the UFC pulled the fight.
So wait.
They said because of this suspicious betting activity, because a lot of late minute money came in on this one guy to win, we're going to pull this fight from the card and not allow this fight to take place and do a thorough investigation.
Okay.
Because something seems wrong because of the previous fight that they know was fixed.
So fighters have been doing that for ages, haven't they? I mean, that's
Yes.
the thing that they've always done.
Yes.
How does that connect then to the AI element of this website?
Well, we were talking about betting.
Oh, I see.
We were talking about polymarket. We weren't talking about AI.
I was
We were
trying to
talking
connect
about,
the-
Yeah. We were talking about polymarket bets, whether or not
Gotcha,
it's legal
okay.
to have inside information.
Oh, but they've all, I mean, I know that...
Polymarket privileged users made millions betting on war strikes and diplomatic strategy. What did they know beforehand? Privileged users, right. So imagine if you're someone who's an aide to the Pentagon. You're working there, and you know that we are going to bomb Iran.
Yeah.
And then there's a polymarket thing about it. No one else knows.
Okay, yes. That's been going on forever, though, hasn't it? People have always done that, always been doing that. That's a plot in Pulp Fiction, isn't it? So Bruce Willis' character bets on something he knows he's going to... He loses the fight.
He throws a fight.
So that he can make the money on it.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well,
That's always gone on. But this polymarket thing is new because you can kind of... There's Kalshi, and then there's DraftKings has it now.
It's not actually gambling. It's the difference here.
You're speculating.
Yeah, you're not.
Oh, right.
In the book or
Right.
the house or whatever. You're betting against each other.
Okay.
Right.
But the fact that they know about it and they know it's happening, that means they'll be able to crack down on it.
But I don't know. Because there's a lot of... There's so many options and possibilities. Like, unless you make a gigantic score and people start getting suspicious, if you're not greedy about it, and you just kind of sneak around a little bit here, a little bit there, I bet you could probably make a lot of money doing that.
But do you think fighters and people like that, sports people generally, I mean, they're too proud, aren't they, to let something like that go just for money?
No.
No?
No, that's not true.
Okay.
Depends on how much money they're making. Look, if you're Anthony Joshua, I'd say, yeah, you're not going to do that.
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
very wealthy. But if you're a guy who's on the undercard and you're only getting $10,000 to fight, but someone's giving you $100,000 to lose,
Yeah, okay.
and you say, okay, I'm just going to box shitty tonight. Guys have done that forever.
Yeah, I guess so.
Just don't knock this guy out, whatever you do, carry him, or carry him to the 10th round.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of that going on, where they say, I have a bet that you're going to knock him out in the 10th round, so knock him out in the 10th round only.
I don't think we'll ever be able to stop that.
No.
That's not gonna happen.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, that's gone on forever.
Yeah. But isn't fighting like a kind of vocation, like a creative vocation for a lot of people?
Well, it is creative, believe it or not, because movement is creative.
Yeah.
You know, when you're fighting, you're not just running at each other, and some guys do, but the really good guys don't just run at each other and charge.
Yeah.
There's feints and deception, there's movement, there's certain things that they're doing where they're reading your movement and trying to guide you in a particular direction and set you up. Like boxers,
I can believe it.
Boxers call it setting traps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like playing, you got a bluff?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of thinking involved in fighting. There's a lot of like fake movement to get you to react, and then they kick you when you settle in. You know, it's really creative. You know, it's just why, like, was it Faye Dunaway? No, who was it that said, you know, the older woman that said it and talked about the arts, and I don't mean mixed martial arts.
What, like a kind of snobbish thing, but then close?
No, it wasn't her. It was the lady from Bridges of Madison County. Who was that?
That's Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep, that's who it was.
Right.
Yeah, Meryl Streep said that. It's like it pissed off so many martial arts people.
Why? That Meryl Streep doesn't like that?
And I'm not talking about mixed martial arts. Like, who thought you were?
Yeah.
Who thought you were, Meryl? That's crazy.
I don't know, she's pretty versatile. She can do
But
it all.
also, even though it's violent, you think it's not art. Just because you don't understand it. If you understood it, it is art, and it is in fact like a beautiful. Some performances are beautiful.
Well, it's choreography, right?
Yeah.
In a way.
Well, it's not choreography at all. It's ad-libbing in the moment. I mean, there's preconceived motions that you have that you're hoping that if the guy does this, you're going to do that, and sometimes it works out.
Yeah.
But it's like the poetry of movement of a really sublime fighter, like, you know, Anderson Silva in his prime.
Yeah.
It was beautiful to watch, you know?
I believe you. I have very limited experience of this. I did Kung Fu when I was 12, and I stopped because I got so bruised. I got so hurt. I was too cowardly.
But, you know, people impose their own standards on other
Yeah.
people and their own ideas of what things are, you know,
Yeah.
from the outside. And, you know, it's kind of silly.
Yeah. Oh, Joe, I was going to tell you about this Berkeley thing, and I almost.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's
We got onto
sidetrack.
elephants, but I think there's a natural segue because I think this encapsulates all of the stuff you were talking about, which is that I was going to this basically Charlie Kirk's talk. He was meant to go on. Berkeley was the last date, and Rob Schneider had agreed to do it. And apparently he'd said to Charlie, you know, what's the craziest place you could take me to? And he said, Berkeley. Berkeley's going to be the craziest. Let's do that. So he was already booked to do it. After what happened with Charlie, Rob asked me if I'd come along as well, and we'd be on a panel. And I had no idea of the extent of the problem, right? So, and I'm sure you know a lot more than I do. You know, but I turned up. We were there. We turned up, and there were men with guns. We were in an SUV under the ground. We got into this venue, and suddenly the security starts showing me footage from outside, and it's like a war zone. People are throwing smoke bombs. They're trying to crash through the railings. Some guy gets beaten up. He's covered in blood because he was wearing a T-shirt with Turning Point written on it. And I'm suddenly realizing, you know what? This is a fantasy world that we're now occupying. We're now occupying a world where the people outside think the world is this, and what's going on inside is completely disconnected from it.
Yeah.
And I actually found it quite depressing. Because when I was sitting on stage talking to Rob and Peter Boghossian and Frank Turek, these people of completely different viewpoints, we're just having a chat. Outside, they're smashing things, they're screaming, they're saying that fascists have overrun the university. You know, and I'm thinking, just to come back to that point you made about, you know, that need for discussion. That experience made me think, actually, now what's happening is we're living in two separate worlds at the same time. and we can't see what the other side is, what the intentions of the other side are. And I don't know how you resolve that. I think that to me sort of encapsulated the entire problem.
Well, at this point, it's going to be very difficult to resolve, and I honestly think it's going to take a generation to work through it.
But isn't it as simple as people learning what the word fascist means, for
It's
instance?
not just that. It's like they firmly believe that they are trying to fight against something that is going to destroy democracy in this country, which is conservative values.
Well, we had that with the No Kings. So there's a No Kings march, and I couldn't figure that out. I was trying to figure out what are they? This is an elected leader.
Well, you know it's all organized, right? You know this is all funded.
I don't know.
Okay, it is. So this was Mike Benz's point when he was talking about the defunding of U.S. aid and what they use that money for. NGOs get a bunch of money, and they fund a bunch of things, particularly in other countries, where they're essentially making it look like there's these on-the-ground street protests that are very organic. But
Right.
it's not. It's very organized, and it's very funded. And the idea is to start chaos.
So I've seen people get caught out, people who are clearly being paid, who appear at various different
It's not
things.
just that. It's also email campaigns. It's indoctrinating people into this particular ideology by supporting universities, so you fund it in advance.
Yeah.
So it's like decades of, and this is, I'm sure you've seen the Russian guy from 1984 or 1985, Yuri Bezmenov, talking about
Remind me.
you never seen it?
I don't think I've seen
It's
it.
a wonderful video because it shows you exactly what happened, how they're going to introduce Marxism and Leninism into universities, and then it'll indoctrinate children, and then those children will be poisoned, and within one generation, it'll ruin the United States' entire educational system.
So that's
and
the long
therefore,
march. I
yeah,
get
that's
that.
the long.
Yeah.
Well, you should watch a little bit of
Okay,
this
okay,
because
yeah.
it's crazy. Because back then, I remember the 1980s. That would be a crazy idea. No, universities are where people have free thought and discussion. It's very important.
Yeah.
You know, and I was in a very left-leaning place at the time. I was
Where were
living
you?
in Boston. You know,
Okay.
it's like probably more universities per capita than anywhere else in the country, at least at the time. It was a very well-read city. Like the idea that universities are going to destroy the way human beings interact and debate is preposterous. But this guy was talking about this back then, that the Soviets had planned this in advance, and that they had essentially subverted our entire education system, and thereby those people would leave those schools indoctrinated and enter into the workforce with these new ideas in